I want to call the July 14th, 2026 meeting of the Brattleboro Charter Revision Commission to order. And our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the June 18th, 2026 meeting. Does anyone have any edits or anything with the minutes?
You do.
I do have an edit to propose. In the motion that's at lines 26 to 30 on the first page, I think some of what you said got a little garbled in the translation.
Yep.
And so I don't think it currently says either what you said at the meeting or what we voted on and intended with our action. If it's okay with you, I'd like to read the sentence as I think it should read rather than talk about replacing individual words because I think that'll be more confusing.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
O'Connor motioned for a Human Services Committee of 9 members, of whom 6 shall serve for 3-year terms and 3 shall serve for 1-year terms. And that would be the first sentence, and that's where the changes are. The second sentence would remain unchanged at each year 3 members shall be elected for a term of 1 year each, and 2 members shall be elected for terms of 3 years each.
Does anyone have any objection to that? Because that is the way we like to say it.
Yep.
Any other edits? Otherwise, does anyone want to make a motion that we accept the minutes as
Corrected.
corrected?
So moved.
Denise moves to accept the minutes as corrected. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? I keep going, I want to go 6-1, 5. 5 yes, 1 abstention. And what we can do is, I'll make sure that Jessica, if you give me that, I'll.
Here,
I'll
do you
send-
want this?
Well, I wrote it a little differently. I'll send it to Jessica so she has it. Thanks, everybody, and thanks to Jessica. Next up is, I do not see any reason to modify the agenda. Does anyone see any reason to modify the agenda? Great. Okay, so we'll get right into old business. As we know, we've been working on deciding whether or not we want to have a combined open town meeting Australian ballot system. Over the last few meetings, we've seen draft timelines, we've answered questions, all that. So tonight, based on, we made no decisions last meeting. Based on last week's or last month's meeting, it was like a month ago, Peter and I drafted some proposed language so that people could have an idea of what a combined system or combined process would look like. And that's what we have tonight. I just want to, before we go through it, because I want to go through it to make sure no one has any questions, or if people do have questions, they can say them, or we can clarify things. And I want Peter to, if I say anything that's contradictory to what you believe, I'm going to speak right now, like as the
Sure.
two of us, since we've
Yep.
worked on this together. We've come in, as you know, right after our first meeting in May, we came in here, both Peter and I have been from the very beginning favoring a combined system. And so we put the timeline together, we put the draft language that you have together, we've proposed 3 alternatives. At our June meeting, we made it really clear that of the 3 alternatives, doing a January OTM and March Australian ballot on our regular scheduled town meeting day was what we were seeing as like the obvious, easy, least blowing up the town government's, system. And we actually, going through this process, looking at draft charter language, it becomes even more clear that January is our preference. But we'll go through all 3 because you folks may totally disagree with us. One of the things that Maya brought up at the last meeting was that January, the date we were proposing, bumps up against Martin Luther King Day. When we go through this, you're going to see that we have found a way around that where we can actually push the meeting back an entire week so we do not bump up against Martin Luther King Day. So I just want to preface what I'm saying is we are biased and everything I present is from our very clear perspective on this. Obviously, we are just 2 of 6 people. So, but I want to be really clear that I'm speaking on behalf of our perspective, knowing that there are other ideas here. I also want to say, you'll note that we've been very deliberate about calling it a combined open town meeting Australian ballot process and not a hybrid, not using the word hybrid. And this comes from my big bugaboo about using the word hybrid. To me, it's a COVID era term that makes it sound like we're doing something because there was a pandemic. And to me, at least the way we're proposing this, it's a real process that takes 2 things that came out of the ballot in March and puts them together. So it's not some hybrid system that's come out of a COVID era thing. I personally want something, if we move forward with this, to be reflected in our charter, that people don't look like, oh, they just did that because of COVID, and that's what hybrid means. So let's do it for real and have a real a combined process.
I just want to add one quick thing there. I agree with all of that, and another way in which I prefer, although it started out with your strong opinion, which I rallied around with you, I prefer combined to hybrid also, because in common usage these days, to me, a hybrid is like this hybrid meeting, where we're doing one thing in 2 different ways simultaneously. And that's not what this process is intended to be. This process is intended to be 2 separate parts that are each their own separate part of an ongoing process. So
Right.
I think we get to that point more clearly if we call it a combined system.
Yeah. So that's why you'll see it's now referred to, well, we did it last time, but I want to make it really clear since we're going over the language. And before I continue, if anybody's watching this online or is watching this at 2 in the morning, everything I'm talking about can be found on the town website at brattleboro.gov/charter-commission. All the language that I'm going to be talking about, as well as the draft charter that I'm basing this off of. The last time we had a charter that we all agreed upon, and it's still our charter right now, is the September 1st, 2025 version. So everything that we're going to be talking about is based on adding or subtracting from that. So if you're following along at home, you can go look.
Can I just
Yeah.
ask a procedural question?
Yes.
Why are we discussing the 3 alternatives before voting on whether or not we're going to proceed with the combined system?
Because I think we need everyone to understand what the combined system would mean for our charter, and we don't.
But isn't that bullet 3?
I'm saying I'm on bullet 1, review draft charter language for the 3 alternatives previously discussed. I mean, if we don't, I thought, so that everybody would understand what a combined system would mean, we could look at the language and then you could say, like, this still doesn't do it for me, or I understand.
I guess my question is, without knowing that, it just seems like some people could want option 1, some people could
Right.
want option 3, but like, there's really no point in discussing those until we know if we're gonna even consider one of
Okay,
these
how
options.
does everybody else feel? I was just actually trying to be respectful and giving people the opportunity to ask questions about what we propose. I'm happy to have just go right for the vote if people want a combined system. You know what I mean? I was just trying to do it because everybody had so many questions the last time. So, and I know where I am. I think Peter knows where he is. I think Hannah knows where she is, I'm sorry. So, you know, Denise, Joy, and Maya, what's your preference? Do you want to go through? It's whatever you want, we will do. If it's not helpful to you to look at it, then we won't do it. But if it's helpful to you, that's what I was doing it for.
I'll acknowledge that I see both. Procedurally, yes, it probably should be before activated, the conversation that the vote needs to happen. I would have value in reviewing them though, which would be against procedure. So I can I see both.
I think we've gone through them
Mhm.
in the past meetings, and I'm assuming everybody read them.
Yes.
So I would be fine to go to the vote and then look at the alternatives and see if we want to pick one. Or,
No, we have to pick one,
yeah,
if we go with the combined system.
well, we have to pick, not one of these three necessarily, but we have to pick an
But
alternative.
that's what I'm saying, we have to pick an alternative. Okay, so,
Yeah, same.
you just wanna go for a vote? Okay, somebody wanna make,
Well, I'd like to ask a quick question of Joy. You indicated that there would be value for you, and reviewing value to help you choose among them, or value to help you decide whether or not you think a combined system is worth pursuing?
That absolutely was also the question in my head. And so I guess then procedurally to clarify that the vote does mean no matter what, we have to go with a combined system, right?
If the vote is yes on a combined system, then we'd be looking at what combined system to do. If the vote's no, we move on to other topics. And if your indication of the value of some additional information and discussion was about choosing among the different options, but you already have, you know where you want, how you want to vote about combined or not, then it sounds to me like we could have a more efficient meeting by moving straight to it. If not, then I'd be concerned that you're put in a position of having to vote on something you don't feel fully ready to vote on.
Yeah,
I can vote.
Okay, thank you.
right, good, okay, so would somebody like to make a motion?
make a motion
Yes,
that we approve a combined process that would include open town meeting and Australian ballot.
so Maya's made a motion that we approve a combined process that would include open town meeting and Australian ballot. Does anyone have any discussion on this? No? Seeing none, all those in favor of Maya's motion to approve a combined process that would include open town meeting and Australian ballot, please say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
4-1. Okay.
Isn't that 5-1?
5-1.
Oh
5-1.
my gosh, I can't do math. How many years have we sat here and I still don't know how many people we are? Okay, so now we've done that. So we'll go through.
Can I ask Hannah
Yeah.
what her objection is?
I think I've been pretty clear since we reconvened that I don't think that a combined system is in the best interest of the town. I think that it's adding extra steps and complicating a process that could be more simple. And I very much disagree with anyone who thinks that the results of the March vote indicated that there was a preference for this hybrid, and I just don't think that it's, I don't think that it's worthwhile to make the system more complicated so that it's confusing for voters and it's more work for town staff.
So which, given the vote, which option do you think? Is it open town meeting or Australian ballot?
I would stick with the charter that we did last September and make some minor edits based on how the open town meeting this past April went.
Is everybody okay now with going through the three alternatives and just looking at what the language is and what they mean? Or do you have another idea?
I think that's good.
Does that sound okay? Okay. So again, we'll go, anybody watching online, we have, it's total draft language. It's from Peter and I. A lot of it is to show you that, or it illustrates that not much at least in most of the charter, has to change if we do an alternative system. There's just, a lot of places it's just dates. We'll go through January just really quickly. If you look, it's page 1 of this document that Seth did for us. It's just a matter of changing the date to either the first Saturday or Sunday after the third Monday in January. The third Monday in January is Martin Luther King holiday, so that puts it on the next weekend.
Can I just, how is the decision Saturday or Sunday being made from year to year in that?
We decided to put Saturday or Sunday. Right now, Sunday is the day because it's basketball season. We did not want to like hold up our entire lives, the town of Brattleboro charter, because of basketball season. So when basketball season ends, maybe basketball season won't happen anymore
Well, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
So, you did this piece of research, I didn't.
Yeah.
You had some communication with the schools.
No, Hillary did.
Hillary did, and
Yes.
then Hillary informed you. Okay.
Yeah.
What we learned in the process of talking to the school about this requirement that we be on Sunday because it was in basketball season is that we were told that in good faith based on the expectation that there will always be a basketball game on Saturday, so the gym would never be available on Saturday. And then in Hillary's further communication with the schools about this, what she learned is that's a scheduling issue from year to year. Sometimes there's a basketball game home that weekend, sometimes there's a basketball game away that weekend. There's nothing to say that the high school basketball authorities are always going to have dictate that there be Saturday games. Years ago it was Tuesday nights and Friday nights. So the point being that since the charter lives for a long time, and there will at least sometimes be the opportunity to have the meeting on a Saturday, other times it would be required to be on a Sunday, that decision could be made from year to year by the select board and warning the meeting in communication with the school district.
Yeah. We didn't want to put something in the charter and say only Sunday when, we don't know, the BOHS basketball program could go away, which means that Saturday gym, the thing would be open. So that's why we did Saturday or Sunday and leave it, you can plan this a year in advance. Just like we did in April, they planned for it Sunday in January this year. We just didn't want to put something in the charter that's going to mean it has to be Sunday when it could be Saturday.
And equally, with it saying Saturday or Sunday, if the school authorities and the town authorities fell into a pattern that it was one of those days always, maybe we'll always have it on a Sunday, maybe we'll always have it on a Saturday, but this provides the flexibility that it could be either one because of the, again, the charter will live for a long time and there can be changes in the school schedule.
Does that make sense?
I just have concerns about it being like this. I think it should be this unless, like it should be this unless otherwise voted, or something to make it more consistent from year to year. But I mean, we can, I guess if this is the model that people want to go with, then that's a further discussion. I don't want to tie up time.
Okay, I'm putting it,
I think everything
Right.
that Kate is leading us through is open for us collectively to make a
Yeah.
decision. She's articulated already that what we're bringing to you is what we think would be the best way to move forward. And you're not going to hurt our feelings if the group of you said, no, we really need to just say Sunday.
right.
Then it'll just say Sunday, that'll be okay. Our recommendation, for the reasons I talked about and she's talked about, is that it be Saturday or Sunday
And
in this language.
we had to have a starting point with this language, you know what I mean? So this is our starting point, but it doesn't mean it's our end point. So I'm putting a little thing to talk about that again. So Article 2, there'll be no changes because there's no change for the dates of when the March election would be. So that's why there are no changes there. The terms of office would obviously be different because instead of having the election first and open town meeting second, we're having the open town meeting first and the election second, so that anybody, if we did this system, they'd be take office upon election and not after the Monday following the annual town meeting. So that's what just changed in January. The referendum one is a little bit, I don't want to say more complicated, but it's got a bigger impact. What was holding us up with the inability, why we were stuck last week with having to have the town meeting the weekend prior to Martin Luther King Day, is that in the charter, we have that referendum provision. And the referendum provision applies only to articles that are on open town meeting or at what was at the time representative town meeting ballot. And there was a 10 days after the adjournment of the in-person town meeting, people have 10 days to go out and get a petition to say, we want an Australian ballot vote on that warrant article. This is a Brattleboro thing. So if we shorten it and say, listen, instead of giving everybody 10 days, you got 5 days to circulate a petition to have something, looked at that was occurred at the town meeting. And we say instead of 5% of the vote, or 5% of the voting population has to sign it, it's only 2. That 5 days allows us to make an entirely new week and push the date back. What's important to know about this also is no longer, if we go with a combined system, which we just voted we're gonna do, no longer will anybody who doesn't like the budget have to go out and circulate a petition and get signatures in order to have it up here on the ballot. So this referendum now is only related to something that's not budget related. You know what I mean? So we're making room for something now that would be the big thing that lots of people would want to go out on, is the budget is automatically going to appear on the Australian ballot. And this thing is only related to articles that are on the in-person town meeting warning. But this allows us, and I talked to Bob about it, he's like, yeah, it's fine, there's no legal reason why we have to. Hillary is fine with it, it actually helps her out because it pushes it to a place where they're not stressing, about getting a ballot printed. So does everybody understand what this does? Have any questions about this?
I just have a concern. If the meeting is theoretically held on a Saturday, Monday's a holiday, you're getting 3
Monday
days.
is not
Monday's
a
not a holiday.
holiday.
No, we're doing the next week.
Okay, so
Monday's not a
if it's on
holiday.
a Saturday, you're getting 4 business days to get this done and submitted. It just feels so short that it's almost prohibitive.
Actually, you have 5 business, if you look, I have a calendar. If the meeting is held on Sunday, the 23rd in 2028, you have the 24th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, 5 business days, and we've lowered the number from 5% of, you don't have to get 450, you get 2%, which is, what is that, 180 signatures.
But if,
Yeah.
I was saying if it's held on a Saturday, you would only get 4 business days.
My note that I wrote here is there a difference between business day and
Not
day
now.
day?
Not now. If you look at what it's done now, it's 10 calendar days now. So it's the same, you still got the same,
Can I add?
Yeah.
So, again, noting that if this is a significant enough concern to any of us, then we could look at making it either
Business days.
5 business days might be
Yeah.
the simplest solution, or some other
Yeah.
modification to this that would make it acceptable. The way that we treated it was in the reduction from 5% down to 2%. So the amount of time is cut in half, and the amount of signatures needed is cut by more than half, making that bar. What we thought the 2 adjustments together actually addressed the question of balancing people really having a fair opportunity to exercise this right with the desire for the more time-efficient process.
and recognizing that you don't have to anymore go and get a petition to have the ballot, the budget go on the Australian ballot, because it's automatically going. But I can make note of that, and we can go back to that if we want to say business days.
That doesn't really make a difference to me, I still think it's too short, so I'm just putting that out there.
Yep.
And just another comment on this section, just stylistically, this C in parentheses, I don't think is an appropriate way to do a cross-reference in here.
Again, I had to put placeholders in so that we had language to look at, and I know that there are gonna be changes to this draft. So
Okay, I thought we were voting on this tonight,
no,
so.
we're not voting on the language tonight. We're voting on what alternative we wanna go on. Then we're gonna take the language and take what we've just heard and, figure out what tweaks we need to make to it. Do you see what I'm saying? And Bob has seen all of this, just so you know, I've run this all by the town attorney. There are a couple things that I need to go and talk to him about, because we have slight differences of opinion. So this is not ready to vote on the exact language tonight. This is what I want to do, is hear all of us say what.
One more time for
Yeah.
both and the reason why there's language here, even though we're not asking that it be the final vote on the explicit wording, is so that we can address the substance. So like you've raised a substantive question about
Yeah.
business days versus calendar days, that we should get to a bottom, we should get to an answer on that tonight as a group.
Yeah.
So then that answer is known at the time when Kate is working with Bob and making sure that the language is all final and proper for
Right.
us to actually vote on a document
Right.
that will be next time, or at the latest, the time after that, the 23rd or the 28th.
Right, that's what the
But-
point is. That's why we need to know that, that people have issues and people have
Yeah.
problems. But tonight, I'm not expecting anybody to vote on the exact language. It's voting on which alternative, so that we can focus in on the draft language for that alternative.
And continue to flag substantive concerns, like
Yes.
calendar days versus
Yes.
business days, so that we can get clear about what the
Yeah.
intent is, and then make sure that that's reflected in the language that
Right.
comes before us next time.
So the current charter would give petitioners until February 2nd. Is that correct?
10 days,
It would give them 10 days.
10 days after adjournment of the meeting, what do they put on my calendar? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
February 2nd.
yeah, it's February 2nd.
Yeah, but it's 5%, and it's 5% of the voters of the town need to sign the petition. Okay. We're coming back to that. I've got
If,
both things.
can I just ask a question? I don't know if anybody knows, but when the referendum was called for to repeal the ordinance,
Mhm.
I think they did it in less than 5 days.
I don't remember the
Yeah.
timing of it.
It was, because somebody was knocking on my door, like, the day after the select board meeting.
Yeah, and that was, that was based on an appeal of or a reconsideration of a select board action rather than a town meeting action, and I'm not sure if it was the 5% threshold or the 10% threshold. There were other aspects of that at that time.
Yeah.
that-
There's a specific
Might not
provision
apply.
on
Yeah.
repealing ordinances.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
there is,
Yeah.
yeah.
And which is still there
Yeah, and we didn't change it. Did
in
we
our
change it? I
recommendations.
can't remember. Okay, so I marked those two. Okay, and Article 6 right now, I just want to talk just about the dates, and then we'll get into the more substantive part of that. For this, we've laid out, there's actually another section that we're adding, so things do have to be renumbered. But for right now, I just want to talk about section 1 that's written here. For January, it would be, we're proposing not later than October 15th, the town manager shall propose a general fund budget. currently, in our current draft, September 1st, 2025 draft, we're saying November 15th. So it's 1 month earlier that the draft would go from the town manager to the select board. Then in B, as you see, we were having the select board approve the budget prior to, or not later than February 1st. Here we're saying December 31st, that they approve the budget. I want to make really clear, and I'm sorry I didn't include December, we have it in our timeline somewhere else. There's a difference between approving the budget and warning the town meetings. You know what I mean? You have to warn they'll have to warn the town meeting earlier, but they don't have to have the budget approved at the same time they warn it. That's why it's pushed out to December 31st, which is, and I went through, I probably didn't bring it, but I went through and I have a list of when the budget's been approved in the last like 10 years, and it's usually the third week of January, sometime pushed a little later. So it's, again, that's about a month later or earlier than prior. So we're talking a month, the process has moved a month sooner or later, whatever the word is, I can't think. Does that make
Earlier.
You
sense?
got to talk about
Earlier.
the downtime in February, or would you like me to? I think one of us should.
Oh, you can talk about that.
Okay, so these dates suggest that pushing the town administration's process, both staff and select board, 1 month earlier is sufficient to accommodate a town meeting being held almost 2 months earlier. And the reason that we think that that actually is a workable process is historically how things have evolved. The staff has submitted a budget on or around November 1st. The consideration by the select board has gone on until towards the end of January. And then February, basically, things are idle. And then in March comes the town meeting related activities, the publication of the town report and the information meeting and so on. There's a period of time that is the better part of February that goes by where essentially nothing related to the budget is happening. And so we think that carving that month out is part of making these two separate elements of a combined system work well together. It's that the town, we had talked about a disadvantage of having a January town meeting when we first started talking about a January town meeting. A substantial disadvantage that I think most or all of us were naming was the need to begin the town administration's budget process early in the new fiscal year. And we think we've addressed that here. We think that it's no longer necessary to do it early in the new fiscal year. And we basically have just compressed the process in a way that doesn't compromise the integrity of it. It takes out that lull that has historically happened in February.
If everybody's okay, I just want to keep going, but do you have a specific thing that can be helpful to us, Melissa?
Millicent Cooley, I'm on the finance committee, and when you say that there's a lull, the finance committee is intensely at work during that month.
Yeah.
So to not have that month, I'm just wondering how we'll
We're coming
function.
to, we're coming to you
Finance
next.
Committee.
Finance committee's next. And then what I want to do is get to the full meat of the finances stuff after. So you see the full text to change is located in a separate document. Let's do that after we get through what we're going through now.
Can I just,
Yes.
I understand this timeline and it makes sense, but I think practically speaking, putting this work in the latter part of December is going to be more challenging than doing it in January because of holidays and staff availability, and I just don't know that practically that is, but like, was that brought up with anyone that you spoke to?
I have spoken to the town manager, who assured me that if we wanted to get a budget, have a town meeting in January, that the town could do it. I spoke directly with the town manager.
I understand, I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying on a practical level, just knowing how a lot of business operates in the month of December, there's not a lot getting done. Because there's a lot of absences and there's a lot of, you know, that
I've
just
spoken-
practically doesn't,
Yeah, I've spoken to the town manager and the town clerk. And I've actually talked to a couple of select board members. It's hard to talk with them because some of them have different levels of experience being on the select board. I was on the select board, Peter was on the town manager. I have been told to my face by the town manager and the town clerk that a January open town meeting is doable.
I'm not suggesting it's not. I'm just putting this out for consideration that
Yeah.
practically getting work done in December is different than getting work done in January.
Yep. Now, the finance committee. In terms of January, what we've done is, the first paragraph, A, there's no changes. B is where, there's a change in the current charter, which supposes that we only have the open town meeting. We were gonna have them get their worked out by February 20th.
Our current proposal, our prior proposal.
Yeah,
This
the
is what-
September-
Not the current existing charter, but the current proposal.
Yes, so September 1st, 2025 charter. We had that if we had just an OTM system, that it would be no later than February 20th. Peter and I talked a lot about this, because there is pressure on the finance committee. We didn't want to set a date, because that just seems sort of mean to say to you guys, this is the date. So what we did say is not later than 10 days prior to the open town meeting, the finance committee shall publish a report. That gives you folks the flexibility to not be beholden to a certain date, but a time frame.
And that time frame would be in the teens of January, because the town meeting would be held in the 20s of January. So that 10-day, it needs to float because of how tight this timeline is between December 31st and somewhere in the 20s of January to hold the meeting. And so this 10-day deadline would fall somewhere in the teens. I'd like to speak substantively to the concern about understanding that historically the finance committee has been active. Some finance committees, honestly, more active than others in February. The finance committee, based on both how the finance committee has been functioning the last couple of years and how we envision it, based on the actions we've taken in the existing prior draft from last September, we envision a robust finance committee that's going to meet throughout the year and address a variety of different financial aspects, or variety of different aspects of town finances, both independently with reports out to the voters and in interaction with the select board and staff. And as it relates to this modification to the timeline for the budget process, our hope and expectation is that the finance committee would adjust to be working in the select board process to get to a place where when the select board has completed its work by December 31st, that 2 to 3 weeks that's available would be sufficient time to finish up the finance committee's work. We would love to hear from you if you think that's not
Yes.
a fair allocation of time,
Dave-
understanding the
David,
balancing of interests that we're trying to do here.
May I ask just a quick?
Yes.
Is this schedule, and I'm sorry, because I haven't studied the schedule, but it sounds like you're saying that we would, the select board would, we would have 2 to 3 weeks from the time the select board wrapped its budget up to when we did our final thing, and that is a lot shorter than what we have now.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
And yes, we are already starting to, and plan on working, during the year, well, anyway, it'll be a challenge, that's all. I mean, I'm not saying we can't do it, but it's a tough.
Okay,
Yeah.
David Levenbach
Yeah,
has got his
I
hand.
know. Let's go to David. Thanks, Melissa.
No, please. I think that, okay, can't access my camera, so you'll just have to believe it's me. I will say that I think it's a monstrous challenge, because I've been on the finance committee for 7 years. I'm not on it now, so I don't have a, dog in this fight. But we have had a number of long meetings to finalize the language in the report, aside from the substantive observations. And the only way I think this will work is if we have a very clear idea where the select board is going to land on the 31st of December. But if they make significant changes in the budget, and we had a lot of those this last year, 2 weeks is it's beastly. And I don't know if you go with this option one, how well this will play out.
Okay,
So that's all I'll say. Thank you.
great, thank you.
Randy, before you speak, I just want to say one other thing.
I'm on the budget advisory as well, so.
Yeah, no, and we want to hear from you. The reason I'm asking to interject something is I'd like to provide some context for everybody to be thinking about. I'm not trying to persuade people one way or the other. There is a balancing act inherent in looking at these three different options. And so as we go through this option one, we find that the work on the front end has a greater degree of challenge to it than in the current system. And then what affects all the voters of the town actually kind of flows as it normally has. That's not quite, I didn't say that well because of the fact that it's a town meeting before the election in order to accommodate these two systems. But what it would do is the voters would become involved in a way that, for one thing, they'd be able to go to the polls one time to vote for both offices and the budget following the open town meeting in January. And we've had a lot of discussion over the last few months around that being desirable, that we not have a system. The other two options are each going to show you different ways in which we could have our election on town meeting day and then a town meeting and then another vote on the budget after that. And so in order to avoid having those 3 steps for the voters and have it be 2 steps for the voters, the way to achieve that is accelerating the getting to the first voter step of a January town meeting. We'll have more discussion about all of that, and we want to hear more from you about it, but I just want people to understand we see the challenges. We understand there are downsides. There's downsides to any one of these 3, and the offsetting upside in this option is having just 2 times that the voters need to actually deal with this matter of business, important matter of business.
Randy.
Thank you.
Hi, Randy Blodgett. We are changing how we do things at Budget Advisory, where we're reporting earlier. We're reporting on more things, as Peter said. And it's not just like the old Finance Committee where it was wait till the budget comes out and then all the work's done during and slightly after. And they worked really hard last year, I know, all the way into the 2nd or 3rd week of February. But I think things are changing all throughout the whole process, and some of it can be done earlier. And the select board is asked, for us to comment even in August and September. I believe the plan isn't October anymore, but beginning in November again, the budget's coming out this year, it seems like, from what I'm hearing. So we're just gonna have to, in my opinion, have to work sooner and harder and earlier with the select board to get that out. But it's also important that it is a 2-step process, as you've said. So we still have more time to, even after open town meeting, to get to the Australian ballot part. And in my mind, both are equal. So hopefully it is a simple majority and not 60%, because the same amount of work needs to be done for both.
Nelson.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be repetitive, and I really appreciate David speaking up here. I'm kind of going through my mind and what actually this, the production steps are to do the report. And basically, it's like 2 weeks to do copy editing. That's after the decisions are made about what the content is. So now we have to, I mean, that would leave us, I've done reports for years and years and years, and that's a hard thing to do. I'm very organized, but I'm not crazy about that, the plan for 2 weeks, is all I'm saying.
Okay, I made note of that. We also have, as Randy was just talking about, because there's a chance that what comes from open town meeting, from the select board to open town meeting, it may change before it gets on Australian ballot. We've put in language that if the action taken at open town meeting, if action is taken at open town meeting that changes select board's recommended general fund budget, the finance committee shall publish a report to further advise and make recommendations to voters not later than 10 days prior to the Australian ballot vote. So we didn't, again, put a specific date, we gave the leeway of 10 days prior. But the vote would be in March, first Tuesday in March. Unless it's, you're doing math in your head.
There'd be a 5 to 6 week period in between the two events.
Yes.
And the second report would be due 10 days prior to the second
So we're
event.
gonna do 2 reports?
What this presumes is if there are changes at open town meeting, there's $27 million is proposed by the select board, $26 million is approved by town meeting, then there would be an addendum report basically from the finance committee in between.
It's fine,
Thing.
Does that make sense?
yeah.
Okay.
No, I understand the problem in the timing, having been on the finance committee myself. But I think parts of the report could be ready before the budget.
Yeah.
Especially if, I know I went to a lot of hearings, and when I was on, we also had the school board to deal with. So I had to go to school board meetings also.
Right.
So, I think you can,
Yeah,
if you think about it, I know it's gonna be tight,
yeah,
but there are parts that can be done in advance.
yeah, I agree.
Okay, now we move on to the human services. The only change that would need to be made, and this is where the wording, we need to work on this a little bit, is the situation that we were in this year, was it this year or last year, where the human services committee was, I guess it was this year, gosh, it was at 0. So they met after, they had done a lot of work. Then it was put down to 0 by the select board, then there was another number, they had to go back and sort of do everything. In order to avoid the Human Services Committee taking the dollar figure that the select board puts in their budget, going out and getting applications and doing allocations based on that, what we wanna do is put language in so that the Human Services Committee does not begin its work until the budget is approved by the last time by the Australian ballot vote. That's the intent.
Adopted budget.
Yeah, so it's an adopted budget, not the budget that OTM adopts, but the budget that comes through the Australian ballot, so that there's not of this flip-flopping. So that's the intent of this language. And, it's written both 2 ways because we have to figure out how we want to deal with budget rejection,
When we get to
there.
talking about budget rejection, there's a concept that we discussed last time that we want to discuss again and get to an endpoint as a group around whether or not to, after 2 rejections, have the third process end with OTM, or whether we simply go OTM AB all the way until there's an endpoint.
Right.
We see that as a point that needs to be decided tonight, and that'll impact which one of these 2 options or, alternative language is incorporated into this paragraph B.
But does this sentence, does everybody understand why this is here, so that we're
Yeah.
not in this
Yeah.
going around? Okay. Okay. Then we'll just flip through, we can flip through alternative 2, and you can just see if the pattern is, if we do the open town meeting in March, but change election day in Brattleboro to May, that we would change the dates. That's what the first thing with the definition of annual town meeting changes, the dates would change. And they would change, you'd have to have date changes down where the elections were, because it would be on the second Tuesday in May, not in March anymore. We would not have our election in March, so it would turn to May.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm asking for the floor because I want to correct a misstatement I made a few minutes ago when I was trying to provide some clarity and context. I said at that time that each of the other 2 alternatives meant the 3-step process, and I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. This second option is still a 2-step process for the voters. We view that as advantageous. The problem is that it starts later. There's plenty of time. Here, there's actually more time to get the work of the staff and the select board and the finance committee done before the voters begin their process. But once the voters begin their process, it's a late start, if you will, that can push the outcome of it off into the new fiscal year. And so that's a disadvantage of this option that needs to be weighed against the disadvantages of the first option that we've already been talking about.
Yeah.
The third option is the one that actually has the compounding disadvantage of being 3 steps for the voters instead of 2.
Yeah, and one other thing with alternative 2, there is still has to be in March on the traditional town meeting day a school vote, but it is not anywhere mentioned in our charter because our school system is not in the town anymore. Do you know what I mean? So we don't have it in the charter that there's a school vote in March, but there will still be a school vote in March that the Brattleboro Town Clerk's office is involved in administering, but it's not part of our annual town meeting process.
And once every 4 years, a presidential primary as well.
Yeah, so but that's not in here under definitions because it is not included in our charter in any way, shape, or form now. We've in fact scrubbed it all. And then again, under terms, it would change to say upon election as opposed to after the annual town meeting because the election comes second, unlike it does now. The referendum is the same language that we just talked about. The dates remain what they are in our current September 1st, 2025 draft, because we're not pushing the town meeting sooner. It's gonna stay in March, so there'll be no change for the dates on how the budget the budget process itself would not change. Under the finance committee, the date there we've left as February 20th, because that was the date we had put in our September 1st, 2025 version. We did add or put in the language that said if the open town meeting changes something, the town, we put the 10 days prior to the Australian ballot vote, they can weigh in on any changes. But other than that, there's
The addendum report.
Yeah, so, so there's no change to the timing of the budget process. If you look, the only change with Human Services is again to say when they start the process, just to make sure, So in essence, it's almost the same, except the dates stay the later dates. Then if you look at the third alternative, which is doing it like we do now, but having a second Australian ballot vote in May. The only change that you'll see, and this was per Hillary, I think we have to make this change if we stay with what we are now, is that the town meeting is held on the second Saturday following the first Tuesday. We had it as the first Saturday following the first Tuesday, but she doesn't want that. She's always wanted it on the second. but there'd be no change to the dates. You go down to the terms, and it would be following the open town meeting of the annual town meeting, as opposed to waiting until the May budget, because the vote in May is only on the budget. So it makes sense, unless Hannah doesn't think it makes sense, that the elected officials become official as they do now after the March open town meeting. So that's a proposal there that somebody may disagree with me on, but having them become, they assume office just like they do now following open town meeting. Then we get to referendum, and it's the same language we just looked at. You get to the finances and the budget process, it's the same dates as if, you know, what we do now, the November dates. The finance committee, it's the same as we just talked about, February 20th, their report, and then 10 days prior to the Australian ballot vote if they want to do another report, but that's the same. And then human services is again the question we just talked about, when do they start their work? So between the three alternatives, the changes are really just more date-wise and some refining of things that have to happen if we are factoring in the Australian ballot. Does this make sense? Does anyone have any questions for this second on any of this? And then we'll go through the financial part.
That's the financial part.
Yeah, I was gonna go through so is everybody okay with the three alternatives for now? That doesn't mean we're ending our conversation about the three alternatives. Okay,
It doesn't mean, yeah, we're coming back to it.
we're coming back.
Got it.
Okay, so then if you look at, the document called Combined Open Town Meeting and Australian Ballot Process, Article 6, Finances. Does everyone see what I'm talking about?
which-
This one?
Second page. This alternative
No,
two?
we already just went through alternative 2 and 3. It's the document after alternative 2 and 3. Isn't it? Am I wrong? Yeah, go to, see alternative 3.
Yeah.
Then you want to look at this one that says Article 5, Finances, or Article 6, Finances.
I just have to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does everybody have it? Everybody see what I'm talking about? So this section would, right now in the September 1st, 2025 version, it's one section. But in order to make it workable, we divided it into two sections. And the first one is budget process. And A, you'll see, is not later than whatever alternative we pick, that date will be in there, whether it's November 15th, whether it's whatever the other ones are, that's the date. Then we talk about, again, in B, it's the date, whatever we pick for the alternative. But then there's language that's added, the last sentence of B would read, the select board shall recommend a general fund budget for the following fiscal year to be considered and approved by the voters of the town through a combined open town meeting and Australian ballot process. So we make it clear what that this is what the process is. So that sentence is added. C is exactly what we have right now in our September 1st, 2025 version. D is exactly what we have now in our September 1st, 2025 version, no change. Then we have a new E. And these are based on what alternative we use. The first one would be is if we were looking at alternative 1 or 2, saying the final budget amount adopted at open town meeting shall be placed on the Australian ballot on the first Tuesday in March or the second Tuesday in May, depending on what alternative we use. Then E is the second one, which is the final budget amount adopted at open town meeting shall be placed on the special town meeting Australian ballot warned for that purpose no later than 40 days after the town meeting. That's if we go with alternative 3. But the effect is the same, which is saying that after the open town meeting, the budget is put on the ballot. That's what those two are, but it's gonna depend on what alternative we use. The one thing I wanna clarify too is the, when I say final budget amount, this is wording that I need to talk to Bob about. We've traded emails on it. We're in essence agreeing that it's either like total budget amount or final budget amount. Bob proposed final, so I put his language in there, but I wanna talk to him, because we've been going back and forth. But does that?
And, go ahead.
No, I just wanna clarify,
Is that the
just.
reason that matters?
Yeah, does this, I just wanna make sure you can say that people understand what these two mean and why there are two of them, okay?
Yeah, and the reason that that language is important is it is the place that conveys how, something we've talked about in several prior meetings and received public input about and had conversations ourselves about, at open town meeting, continuing to have the several different items that have traditionally been part, not always the same, there are always one for the DBA, one for human services, and one for the rest of the town budget. Sometimes there's a third or a fourth or fifth, or a fourth or a fifth, whatever, but whatever number there may be in a given year of items that are specific to a particular topic that's going to go into the general fund budget, those items plus the catch-all item at open town meeting become the town's general fund budget. And the one number of the final or total budget amount is what would be on the Australian ballot for a vote on whichever date that ends up being the thing. So there's a process of addressing the particular pieces at open town meeting, consolidating the pieces, and voting on the budget at Australian ballot.
And we had talked, how many meetings ago, about that we'd have one question on the ballot, and we saw what
Language.
those
yeah.
language were. So that's what we're trying to achieve in this, in E, based on what alternative we have, that wording. And Bob is suggesting final, I had total, so we're gonna talk about that. Does everybody have any issues with that I should note? Questions? Okay. Then we have F is where I know we have lots of issues to talk about. There are two ways to go: that the budget shall be considered adopted unless rejected by 60% of the town's legal voters voting on the question at the election, or alternative F, the budget shall be considered adopted after an affirmative vote by a majority of the town's legal voters voting on the question at the election. I also want to know, I need to talk to Bob about this one. I sent him this draft language, and he sent me language back that said, what does it say? The budget shall be considered adopted unless 60% of the town's legal voters vote by Australian ballot to disapprove the final budget amount. My issue with that is, he's got the thing saying 60%, it's based on 60% of the legal voters, not 60% of the voters who actually vote at the election. I personally think it should be 60% of the people who vote at the election,
Right.
not 60% of 9,000, because
You'd never get
you never get there. So I think I just need to talk to Bob about, like, well, maybe I didn't convey my question properly, you know what I mean? I might have not.
This is
been
an
clear.
example of why the language isn't final.
Right.
But is intended to convey the substance of
Yes.
where we're trying to land.
Yeah. So if it's okay with you, I want to keep going and we'll get back to this question, because I know, are you going to give your opinion on this?
No,
Okay.
I think, didn't Bob say, just my recollection
Yeah.
here, didn't he say that if you're going with a supermajority, it needs to be in the negative?
It does.
That's right.
It does.
Yeah, so that's even more complex.
And that's why why there's an either or here for section
Okay.
F, once we decide that matter substantively.
Yeah, yeah. I just think, but this is in essence, what the language would be. And then we'll go back and we'll actually talk about where people want to go on this. now this is an entirely new section, section 2, and if we put this in, it is gonna mean we have to renumber some of the other sections in section 6, the finance section. And this is if the budget is rejected. So as you can see, A is if the Australian ballot vote results in a rejection of the budget, the select board shall warn an open town meeting to be held within 40 days of the Australian ballot vote for the purpose of considering the rejected budget. So that, I think, is self-explanatory. They actually have between 30 and 40 days to warn a meeting. We put it at the 40 days, so that if they wanted to warn it at 30 days, they could, but we figured, let's put the final out date.
Are they considering the rejected budget, or are they gonna make changes to the budget?
Who's they?
The select board.
It's going back to open town meeting. The select board can do what they want with it, within that.
I think it's the question on I understand it's not the exact wording and it's the essence of, but for the purpose of reconsidering the rejected budget,
Yeah.
is that what's in the September 1st version? Like that kind of language, meaning it's already been approved type of language?
There wasn't any such language in the September 1st document because we didn't have anything about a rejected budget. In this case, we felt it was necessary to include a budget rejection section to talk about how the sequence of events will happen, because it's a sequence of events. Under the current system, or even our proposed just open town meeting system from September 1st, if it was rejected at open town meeting, then it goes back to the select board, and the select board decides how to proceed, and at some point there's another town meeting. This would prescribe, because of the two separate pieces, how those two separate pieces are supposed to flow.
Sure, and I think it's just about like this, considering the rejected budget, as opposed to saying propose a new budget, or a language that also, and again, this is essence
Yeah.
of, but that considering of the rejected budget is a stumbling block.
Yep. And one of the things, just so you know, and this doesn't mean that this is perfect language, I actually went back through like every town charter, because we've never had rejection language in our charter. So I went through all the other town charters, and most people don't have rejection language. But I found this language from Shelburne. So that's where I stole it from, because I was stealing language. But
Yeah.
you're right, we could put it in a positive way.
Yeah, like for the purpose of further considering the
Annual budget or
town's
something.
general fund budget.
Yeah.
Something
Sure.
like that.
Make it sound positive.
Yeah.
Can I,
Yes.
in Shelburne, are they doing the first vote by Australian ballot? Like there's no
I-
two-step process?
No, we would be the only people that are having a two-step process. I totally understand that we're doing something new.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand, so I'm just like, in that scenario, the open town meeting is reconsidering, or not even reconsidering, is looking at that budget for the first time. That was rejected. Because there wasn't an open
No.
town meeting before the vote.
I have to confirm that, because I don't know, to be honest with you.
Because-
What I was trying to do is set forth some language that it talks about how we think it should go. And this was language that actually feels like how we should do it. If it's rejected, it should be warned again.
Yes.
And for the purposes of, whether they do it like we do it or not, it's language that fits what we want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I entered the room tonight liking the language that we proposed, obviously, because I agreed with it. But I think what you flagged is important in that considering the rejected budget is looking at the thing that nobody wants anymore, or like a majority don't want anymore. And so it feels to me like an easy fix.
Yeah.
Again, we don't need to
Revised.
wordsmith it right here,
Yeah.
but if the essence of this instead was further considering the town's general fund budget, I think we've addressed your concern and kept it clear of what's intended in the process.
Does that make sense? does that make sense to you, or are you still?
No, that wasn't what
Oh.
I was getting at, but
Oh.
it doesn't really seem to matter what I say, so I'll just.
No, it
That's
does.
not
I just wanna hear, like, to me, we're doing something new. So we're never gonna find a charter that's doing what we're doing. So what I was looking at is figuring out, is there language that's in charters now that can help us figure out how our process should go? I don't think just because Shelburne doesn't do it the way we do it, because no one does it the way we're proposing to do it,
Right.
that should scratch out that language, because it's actually what I think comes next. Whether I stole it from Shelburne or not, I don't know what else would come next. I mean, do you have another idea of what should come next, I guess? If it's not having them put it on 40 days later. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's what this is just saying, that the select board shall warn a meeting 40 days after the Australian ballot vote. Like, what else would we do, I guess is my question.
I just think that you're sending the rejected budget back to the body of voters that already approved it once.
Mhm.
And in the Shelburne model, it's going to a different body to
Mhm.
look at it again and make edits.
Right, but let's forget I said Shelburne. I made a mistake by saying that. To me, it doesn't matter how they did it. It's the language, the intent for me was the language that just says, after the budget is rejected, it goes back to a special open town meeting. That's all I'm trying to get at.
Right. And
You know
in
what I mean?
any case, it's gonna go back to an entity that has already approved it,
Right.
because the select board already approved what it sent forward too. So the intent here is, we've been at town administration, we've been at open town meeting, we've been at Australian ballot, we've landed in a place where Australian ballot said, no, not that budget. So we've gotta go back and do something and to continue the process till we can get to a yes. And so what we're suggesting here is, in the charter, we ought to be saying when an open town meeting has to happen. So we go back and have an open town meeting and an Australian ballot again. By warning it 30 to 40 days out, there's a window of time for the select board to do work to send a proposal into that open town meeting. But we don't say send it back to the select board, in part because of trying to maintain a workable timeline so that we can have a second vote on the budget whenever possible, sooner than when we're already into a new fiscal year.
Yeah.
And so there is time for the select board to make some amendments to it. And yes, this in any case does call for it to go back to a body that has already approved the thing that got rejected. But that's what happens now, when something gets sent back to the select board by a town meeting. The select board has to rework something it already thought was finished so that it can try to get a yes out of town meeting. And that's what this would call for too, but in a more complicated manner.
Yeah. And again, we haven't had any language dealing with rejection, but we sort of felt like there should be language, because we're doing a combined system now, that instead of like leaving everybody in the like, well, what does this mean? Actually, laying it out. And the next step, I mean, to us, or to me, and to Peter, the next step is sending it back to OTM. And that's what this A is intending to do.
Is there something else any of you think should be the prescribed next step? We get to the Australian ballot vote, the budget is rejected, that's a Tuesday. Wednesday morning, we wake up and say,
What do we do now?
What's next? Is there a step other than warning a new OTM for further consideration of the budget? Is there some other step that you think is the next step that ought to be prescribed by the charter?
I guess I want to clarify in this, the select board is not, in this, is the select board re-looking at the budget. So like, yes, let's say it's a 20 million budget and it goes through the process and Australian ballot rejects it. It starts again at select board to figure out the new digit.
Not necessarily.
In this writing is what I'm asking.
In this writing, it doesn't make the select board do that.
It just calls a
it-
meeting of open town meeting
That's
to
right.
figure out the new.
And our expectation is, any select board is going to want to take that body of work and rework it and say, okay, if that wasn't acceptable, please approve this one. But that they'll do that during the 40-day window that is in between the Australian ballot vote and the second OTM.
And what we're up against is the fact that the current charter doesn't, or even the September, doesn't have anything about rejection, so there is no prescription that the select board comes up with a new number.
Exactly.
Yes, and our concern is, my concern, I think it's our concern, is in the absence of this kind of specific language calling for, like, get on it right away, warn that next one so we keep this process moving. In the absence of that, we could fall into long delays of select board thinking, well, what are we gonna do about this? And we wanna consider changes and whatever else. We'll get to a place where we'll warn a meeting. Already, 2 of these 3 alternatives, if there is a rejection of the budget on the first vote, the second vote doesn't happen until August 8th in 2028 on that timeline. The second Australian ballot vote, the second potential endpoint of the process, if there's a rejection on the first one, is August 8th, which is more than a month into the new fiscal year. So we think it's important that there be language. It doesn't have to be this language, but we do think it's important that there be language that says to future town government, like, you gotta get on it, and you gotta get on it right away, and this is what you gotta do to keep the process moving. And there is still an opportunity here. We could put in a paragraph that isn't here that speaks to the select board doing, some language that says the select board shall, at its discretion, offer an amended recommended budget for consideration at that OTM. We could make it clear that we anticipate that being a part of the process. But we think it's important that as soon as possible, the second OTM gets warned so that that can get completed, so as soon as possible, the second AB can be warned. Otherwise, we're looking at a situation where it could be into the fall before we have an approval.
What happens under any of these alternatives if it's open town meeting that rejects the budget?
It goes back.
Then it goes back to the select board. Nothing goes on to AB until it's been approved at open town meeting. And if you
But we
recall,
don't-
there was a suggestion to us at one point about requiring OTM to pass something for that very reason. And some of us, I did, liked that idea, that we would say OTM has to send something to AB. OTM gets control over what it sends. And
We said.
we didn't land there. We landed in a place that said, no, they've got to be able to say no to it if they can't get to a yes.
And if
And
you-
that, I think, does make rational sense.
So
If you look at
if,
page 1, Maya, under C, it says that is explicitly, or rejected and returned to the select board for further consideration. And that's in our current September 1st, 2025 draft.
so if OTM rejects the budget, it goes back to the select board, and then there would have to be a second
OT.
OTM.
Mhm.
And then
Australian ballot.
that budget, if approved,
That's right.
would go to Australian ballot.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think and Peter and I have had multiple talks with Hillary about this too, is that this is based on at least my interpretation of what we've been talking about with Hillary, is that we could sit here and think of every single scenario, like what happens 5 times, what are we gonna do? We have to just plan, like Hillary was like, you know what, if it goes back 5 times, it goes back 5 times, and we'll deal with it. You know what I mean? I think we can't overthink how many times something is gonna go back, is basically my thought on this, because, yes, Millicent?
For the basic scenarios that you are thinking through, is there, do you know the cost to the town? Is there a statement about the cost to the town, for example, of, the Australian ballot and then, these basic scenarios?
Yep. Yep.
Do you have
We
that?
did have numbers, maybe you remember them off the top of your head. I don't remember them off the top of my head. In a meeting several weeks ago, like 2 or 3 meetings, probably 3 or 4 meetings ago in this process, we heard those numbers and weighed the relatively nominal cost compared to the democratic process we're trying to enhance. It was on the order of between $10,000 and $20,000 per election. And we decided, that that's money well spent to create what we're hoping will be a more democratic
So
process.
so like now it's, are you saying it's roughly, you're saying 10 to 20 for each type of election, roughly?
Yeah, it
Roughly.
depends.
So if you have an OTM, it's 10 to 20, and then you have an Australian ballot, it's 10 to 20, and then it gets rejected and goes back, it's 10 to 20, and then 10
That's
to
right.
20. So if it gets rejected at OTM, it's like 20 to 40
Yeah.
more.
And there's ways in which we've discussed
I'm not-
how
I'm
the
not
town might
criticizing that,
potentially
I'm just-
reduce those costs, and Hillary agrees, there are some ways maybe the town might reduce those costs, and none of that would make it into the charter, because that's operational decision-making that would happen about the practicality of holding the event, whether it's in person or a ballot, versus the cost of the event.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing this from Joy, is that we should consider a sentence saying the select board, if they want, can do something to the budget. I mean, is that what you're thinking? I'm saying it really inartfully.
I mean, the fact
Make
that
it
there's language at all is more than what we have had.
Mhm.
I don't want to tie anyone's hands in the future. But I also worry about not mentioning anything. And I don't know where the balance is. We've lived in gray area for a long time. Potentially flourished, or maybe also had hands tied without the clarity.
Mhm.
But, so I guess I'm not decided either way, but
I'll
if
flag
there
it.
is I would need to read more in context to go like, yes, we are super specific.
Mhm.
And so this is an opportunity to also be that kind of
Okay.
specific.
I'm putting a little flag by it. Okay,
To come back to for discussion tonight, or?
yes.
Okay.
We'll go through it all
Great.
again, so we can make sure.
Good.
Okay, now we go down to B, so after the town meeting, or after they've warned a town meeting, then it goes, the select board shall warn a special vote by Australian ballot on the total budget adopted at the special open town meeting, reference in paragraph A above. So, we have a special town meeting, whatever passes the special town meeting, again, we have another Australian ballot vote.
And our initial drafting of this had the same kind of very specific, like, get on it immediately, warn it for within 40 days language. The reason why it doesn't have that is because of our understanding of the practicality of holding a mid-July vote on the budget and a first week of August statewide primary election is all but impossible for the town clerk's office. And so on years when there's a rejection and the town can move right away, there could be a second vote in mid-July. But in the even numbered years, when there's going to be a statewide primary in early August, then this warning of the second Australian ballot vote on the budget would be warning it to be held on the same day as the statewide primary. And that's why in the 2028 calendar that's in tonight's backup, it speaks to an August 8th primary
Yeah.
date.
Yeah. So that's, yeah.
Or a second, I'm sorry, it's because of the primary that it's an August 8th second vote
Yeah.
by Australian ballot on the budget.
So basically, that's written like this so that it can be, give the select board the leeway to say, wait a second, we're about to have a vote in August, let's wait and put this on the August thing. Yes, Tom?
What if it is the OTM that rejects the budget on the second pass? Then you go to the backwards, and your timeline is,
Right.
you're in August no matter what.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and that gets to what Kate was saying about Hillary saying, look, you can't write all the different scenarios.
Right, so
So
we
in
have a lot-
that scenario, it goes back to the select board.
Yeah.
We
And
have,
it-
but just we have a lot of, we can't cover all the scenarios.
No.
Right, and so then
that's
we'd have a
it.
long delay, and there is something we're coming up to that
that
Kate will
you
speak to
heard.
in a minute, that speaks to how the town can keep functioning if we get well into a new fiscal year without having an approved budget.
Isn't that in the statute?
No.
There's
It's
language we
already-
think should be
It's in the
addressed
charter
here.
now.
No, not this, not D. Well, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
It allows them to borrow funds. It's in the current charter.
Oh, yeah, but it doesn't let's get to it and then I'll explain. Okay, so they vote another Australian ballot vote. Then we have two different scenarios again on what to do if there's a rejection. So the first scenario under C is if the special vote by Australian ballot results in a second rejection of the budget, the select board shall immediately warn a special open town meeting at which the budget shall be determined without a subsequent Australian ballot vote. So after the second rejection under first option C is it ends, there's an end at that open town meeting decides it. Or you have the other option is if the voters continue to reject the budget, the process outlined in this section shall continue until a budget is approved. So it would just keep going. So those are two different ways to deal with it. We have to decide what we're thinking. And then we get to, and we'll come back to that. Well, D is what Maya was talking about. If the general fund budget for the following year has not been approved on or before June 30th of any year, which is the final date of the fiscal year, the select board may borrow funds necessary to enable it to operate the town up to a maximum of the property taxes levied in the prior year's budget. There is something in the charter that allows them to borrow funds. There's nothing specifically in our current charter or our June 1st, 2025 language that says they can borrow funds up to this amount to keep the town going. But we thought that we should put something in, given the fact that now we have this new process that if we let it go forever, can go forever.
Especially if we choose the second option for paragraph C, and the process will always end with an A/B vote, then there's no guaranteed endpoint. It could be 4 rejections or 5 rejections. I mean, it's unlikely that anything like that would ever happen, but because of those uncertainties, we think this paragraph D is important. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you exactly how it differs from statute, but what I can say is we like the simplicity of D as we've written it. We think we should have this language in our charter because there is statutory language that talks about how a community can keep functioning. But I believe it speaks to levying taxes. I don't believe it speaks to borrowing money. I'm not certain of that, and so we should seek some additional legal counsel on it to be sure. But we've been through the, like, what if this, what if that scenarios around, like, the town doesn't have an endless supply of money to, draw on to keep functioning. And the taxation piece, as a practical matter, regardless of what's in statute, what I would say is, as a practical matter, levying taxes when we don't know what the tax rate is actually going to be for the year is a complex, unnecessarily complex and cumbersome process that will lead to confusion across the entire community and a significant burden for the town government. Because the reason why is they would issue tax bills in the normal manner, and we'd all have our August tax bill, first quarter payment that's due, but at some point late in the summer or into the fall, there's going to be a budget, and everybody's going to get an amended tax bill, and everybody's going to have to pay something different in the last 3 quarters, maybe in the last 2 quarters, depending on how long that process goes on. It would be very chaotic. It would double the work of the town staff, probably more than double because of all the recalculation aspect of this. There's lots of opportunities to mess it up, and we don't need to do it. We can do it, but this is, I think, it's certainly simpler, and I think a way of addressing that hopefully rare but important need of the town to borrow the money for the short term. There's a cap on it. You can't go all wild with it. You can't borrow more than what was the actual tax levy for the prior year. So you borrow some amount of money, you keep the town government functioning, we get to a place where we have a budget, the tax bills go out one time, and we repay the debt.
Now,
What this is intended to accomplish.
And I'm going to ask Hannah a question that may, negate. It was my understanding from Bob that there isn't anything in state statute that talks about what the towns can spend. It talks about what the schools do, You know what I mean? Schools spend.
There's definitely something for schools.
But I don't think, Hannah, there's anything in the state statute that talks about what a town, at least I couldn't see it. So that's why it's even more important that it's there, because if there's nothing there, because Bob was the one that suggested we put language in.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with whether or not that there's a provision for that.
Yeah, I don't think there is. I think it's the
But-
school.
but,
But in any case, we should put
I
it
would
in.
just say, for us, I believe that regardless of what's in statute, our charter, we've been through many times together, how, we're only putting in here things that we think we want to do differently than in statute in any case. So even if it exists in statute, I suggest that we approve this language in paragraph D, so that we have a clear and simple process for keeping town government running in years when we have multiple rejections of the budget.
Does anyone have any issues with this?
David is.
Oh, David Levenbach.
Hi, I don't want to sound, David Levenbach, District 9, former Finance Committee member. I don't want to sound like Pollyanna, which is definitely contrary to my style. But there's been discussion about repeated rounds of rejection by Australian Ballot, and I think that's unlikely. So there's a concept of synergism where people early in the process anticipate the behavior of people later in the process, but that people later in the process take into account what has been decided earlier. I think if you have select board budget, OTM comment, rejection by AB, there will be enough public discussion to guide the select board to make the changes that they think will pass muster with OTM and Australian Ballot. Having said that, I would also say that in the end, I would prefer, if there is a rejection, the option or the alternative that says after a rejection, the decision by OTM, who are in fact elected by the people, will be definitive. And so you don't go through this endless cycle. Thank you.
No.
So I whispered it to Kate, I'll
Yeah,
say it out
we-
loud for
yeah.
the record. OTM,
It's not elected.
people
by the
who participate in OTM are not elected by the people. RTM, yes, but no longer.
Yeah, Tom?
24 VSA 1786, a municipal corporation may also borrow money in anticipation of taxes in an amount not to exceed 90%.
So
It is in statute, you're going to 100%.
actually, what that language is speaking to is borrowing money at the beginning of a fiscal year when you have an adopted budget and you're anticipating the taxes that are going to come in through that budget, you can borrow up to 90% of it. That's not anticipating a rejected budget.
Thank you.
Thanks for digging into it, though.
Do the best I can on the
I
phone.
understand.
Okay. Do we want, I don't know if anybody wants to take a little break or keep going and just, you want to take a little break and then we'll come back and we'll discuss
Which
which alternative? Does that make sense? Okay, so we'll take like a 10-minute break.
Come back at 8 o'clock.
Come back at 8 o'clock. Everyone can take a bathroom break. Thank you. Yeah, so does everybody feel okay with, we just pick the alternative next and then we go back and haggle over some of the either ors? There's a couple either or questions. Okay. I'll do a quick recap just so we're all on the same page. Alternative number 1 is the January open town meeting and March Australian ballot. That's the one I'll be on, say it again, Peter and I prefer that. It's changes, we would not have an open town meeting in March, it would be changed to January, which would mean that the town clerk's office we wouldn't be adding a meeting, we'd still have one town meeting and the ballot would still take place on the traditional town meeting day. Those are the benefits of that. No more staff, no extra staff time. It is earlier. They'd have to prepare a budget earlier, but it keeps it compact and we're done in March. Alternative number 2 is the March open town meeting and the May Australian ballot, which is both the elections and the budget. We would be no longer having Brattleboro's open town meeting in March. It would be shifted to May. So again, we're not adding another meeting. We'd have our open town meeting in March. Election day would be in May, but it does push everything down into May if there's a rejection. And as an aside, we still have to have the school budget, the school vote by Australian ballot in March. But for town purposes, it doesn't add anything new. And again, this is just the Reader's Digest version. The alternative number 3 is we'd have Australian ballot elections on the traditional day that we always have them, first Tuesday in March. We'd have an open town meeting in March as we traditionally do. But then at the end, after that open town meeting in March, the same time we do now, we'd have another vote in May on Australian ballot. So in this thing, we're adding another process. We're adding another step, which is to hold Australian ballot votes. We have 2 Australian ballot votes in a March open town meeting. So in a nutshell, those are the 3 alternatives that we are looking at. Does anyone else want to say anything about the alternatives or ask any questions? Peter.
I just want to add one thing that you didn't just mention. We have talked about it, but I want us to be thinking about it in this moment as we make this decision, which is looking at the end of the process. So it feels important to me that in this trade-off between the doing things earlier and on a tighter time frame to achieve the January-March option 1, and the trade-off between that or either of the other 2, having a calendar that would take us well into the new fiscal year on those occasions when there's been a budget rejection and we need a second townwide vote. I want to acknowledge that those should hopefully be rare occasions, but we're building a system that presumes that they will happen. I think that they may, perhaps will happen. It's good, appropriate for us to be planning for that. So I just wanted to name a couple of very specific dates, which are that if we do the January alternative, then the second, using the 2028 timeframes that are set forth in the calendar, and this is from a document that we looked at together last time, at our last meeting. In those years where it gets rejected once and there needs to be a second vote, the second AB vote would happen on Tuesday, June 6th, still 3 weeks prior to the beginning of the new fiscal year. In either of the other 2 alternatives in 2028, that vote would be on Tuesday, August 8th. And even in a year when there isn't a statewide primary, even in the odd numbered years, it would be a mid to late July second AB vote. I think it's that is a compelling reason to me. I don't know whether or not it will be to y'all. In the fact that none of these systems are perfect, they all involve change and one degree or another of challenging change. To me, that's the best reason. The continuity of town government from one fiscal year into another is the best reason to support, along with the other things that Kate already mentioned about what differentiates these systems. That's why I hope we choose alternative 1.
I have a question about alternative 1. And that is, what happens if we have a major snowstorm in January?
We could have a major snowstorm in March just as easily as January. We had one at 2 town meetings ago?
Yeah.
I mean, fortunately, we live in New England. You know, we can't predict the weather. And I don't know how we write a charter that predicts the weather. And again, this is one of the scenarios we were talking about with Hillary. Anything can happen. I mean, we'd have to
Yeah.
actually somebody would have to show up at the high school to, you know, what Hannah went over the right word, but like adjourn the meeting to another date. So, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, because I think we can think about it and all the different scenarios that could happen that could make something go wrong, but we just don't.
No, I just
No.
wanted you to say
Yeah.
that again.
Yeah.
We said that once before,
Yeah.
and I wanted
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
record.
yeah. Does anyone else have anything they want to say? I mean, I'll put in, again, you know, I'm for January. I would like us to come out with a system that people can understand. And everybody knows March, the first Tuesday in March is when they go to the polls. I worry about having an Australian ballot vote in May when, you know, people aren't used to that. So, you know, I think we can do what we've been asked to do. At least I think we've been asked to do, without having to switch things to like on a date that nobody knows. It's you
I have
know.
a suggestion about process for us to get
Yeah.
to decision making.
Yeah.
If at least a majority of us, perhaps all of us, can agree that the 3-step system is the least desirable of these three, that the March, May alternative 3 is the least desirable. If we're in a place where we can agree about that, then I'd like to do that first and put it away, and then it becomes a binary choice. We're looking at pros and cons of March, May versus pros and cons of January, March. Is that an acceptable first step to everybody?
Yeah. Does anybody like the
Yeah,
3-step
you wanna
thing?
speak up
Does
for that
anyone
one?
like alternative 3, which would be a March ballot for all of our elections, the March open town meeting, and then May, we'd have a separate Australian ballot just for the budget. So we're adding something to our system. Does anybody like that? Or can we set that aside?
I'm fine setting it aside.
Okay. We set it aside. Hannah, are you okay with us setting it aside? Or do you like it?
I mean, practically speaking, there's still going to be a second vote in March. Either way, right? Like, you're either gonna have, because under option 2, there's no ballot vote, but there is still a ballot vote, just not for town level stuff.
Are you talking alternative 3 or alternative 2? Oh, yeah, yes. But what we want to try to do is there a reason for us right now to even talk more about alternative 3, or should we reduce it down to alternative 1 and alternative 2?
I'm just trying to clarify, like, there are still, it's still 3 parts, it's just that one is not part of the town.
Oh, yeah, with alternative 2, yes.
But not alternative 1. In terms of events, if you think of it as in events,
I'm
there's
talking about 2.
2 events in 1,
Yeah.
2 with an asterisk in 2 because of the school election.
Yeah.
And 3 that we would be calling for in 3, which is why we're trying to rule it out.
Yeah. Yes. No, you're right. That's to me is one of the downsides of alternative 2, is that there still has to be the vote on the election. Although Hillary says it's really low lift for the town in the school election. It's a really low lift, and they could probably do the vote right at the town clerk's office. But it still has to happen, and it still has to happen every 4 years when we have a presidential.
But that gets into weighing 1 versus 2 if we can focus that way, if we
Right.
can eliminate 3.
Yeah, we wanted to see if we can eliminate 3 so we don't even have to think about 3 anymore. Alternative 3, and we can go and look at alternative 1 and 2. Like, are you okay with us not talking about alternative 3 anymore?
Yeah, I guess I just don't see how that's that different than 2, but I don't really plan on voting for any of these, so you
Okay.
can do what you want.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna put 3 aside, And we're gonna focus on what's the differences, pros and cons of alternative 1 and alternative 2. And as Hannah just said, and what we pointed out earlier, is that in alternative 1 is 2 steps. The open town meeting in January is just switching it from the March date to a January date. And we'll still have on the first Tuesday of March, town meeting day, where the select board will be voted on, like high bailiff, all those other random things that we vote on. The school budget will happen that day. The school board vote will have, not the school budget, I'm sorry, school budget's a special thing. School directors will be voted on that day. And one more question would be on that ballot. It's the budget question. So the ballot will look like, just like we all see now, plus there'll be the Australian ballot question on the budget. That's alternative 1. Alternative 2 is we would not have, we'd have an open town meeting in March, same time that we've traditionally had it. We would not have our town election in March anymore. It would be in May. And the May ballot would have, the select board would be elected, the high bailiff would be elected, all those random people that we elect would be there. And we'd have the additional question of the budget. But because we're in a unified school district and everybody, all these other towns, the other towns that we're in with, vote on town meeting day, we'd still have to have an election in March. That's just the school district. But it's not in our charter because we don't deal with the school district in our charter. That's why it's not here. But it still has to happen along with the presidential primary. So, and that's what Hannah is talking about. There's still something that goes on with the town clerk on a vote in alternative 2. And the elections and everything take place 2 months after than they normally do. So those are just the Reader's Digest differences between alternative 1 and alternative 2. We're adding, it appears that there are only 2 different things, but there's still the school director election that has to occur on the first Tuesday in March.
I have to say I'm torn between alternative 1 and alternative 2. The school board election, when Hillary was here and she talked to us, she indicated to me that this is how I interpreted what she said, that having a school election wasn't going to be any big deal, that she could do it in this room, or she could have people come to the clerk's office. Of course, every 4 years there'd be a presidential primary, and that's a whole different thing.
Can I add one thing, just when you're thinking of that? There's the also education factor when people show up. For a while, people wouldn't know that they're not voting on everything until May. You know what I mean? They would come and say, well, I want my ballot. And it's like, oh, that's not till May now. So there's the education factor.
Well, there's the education factor for open town meetings in January.
Exactly.
And that's one of the reasons why I mean, whichever alternative we end up with,
there's education involved.
It's going to be a change and it's going to be different. And the other reason I'm torn is because I've heard what the finance committee people had to say, and I've heard, and I know that John said they could do the budget, no problem. But having been an agency head in another life, I know that summertime is not a fun time to be doing that. I mean, you have people going on vacation, there are all kinds of issues with trying to get a budget so that we could have open town meeting in January. So anyway, so that's why I'm torn between the two. And I'd like to hear what either Joy or Denise have to say.
I am leaning towards one. It's simpler. I like what the town has said about it. And I also want to later address when we go through the other things about if the budget fails, the steps we take after that. That's the only caveat.
I would agree that I sort of go back and forth between 1 and 2, thinking of the timing. I think about the potential participation level of the different timings. Of how hard it would be for folks to think in May, especially with it being like so much later. It's hard to come back for one more thing. And so if I think about the transition that it would need and the education needed, I think it would be easier for general folks to see the January, so alternative one, the January, March, to see how they build to each other, as opposed to waiting and delaying and kicking the can to May. So, probably alternative one.
Yes, Peter.
I think we've heard 4.5 people express an interest in alternative one. So in order that we make this decision and can move forward to the details, I'd like to make a motion that we officially, as a commission, select alternative one as our recommendation.
Okay. Peter has made a motion that we officially select alternative one as our recommendation. Does anyone have anything else they want to say about it before we vote? Maya, are you okay? Can I call a vote, or do you want to ask a question?
No, I'm just thinking about how I'm gonna vote. That's all.
Okay. Okay. Seeing no more discussion on it. All those in favor of Peter's motion to officially select alternative one as our recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
5-1. I got it. All right. All right. So let's focus on alternative one and just go through, because I would love to I want to make sure we've got the clear direction on what you folks are thinking about this language, so that the next time we talk, we can have it in a way that everyone likes. Do you want to go through that? Let's go through the hard stuff. Well, I don't know. Why don't we go through? Let's go through alternative. Let's go through the actual alternative one draft language first, which says it's in bold on top, alternative one, and then we'll go to the finance stuff. So the first thing I flagged about this was saying the first Saturday or Sunday after the third Monday in January. And I think, Hannah, your concern was, should we be more, maybe it was not just Hannah, maybe it was other people too, but have Hannah, should be more definitive and just pick a day. How does,
I think if the goal is consistency, and then it should be consistent. And if we want to put something in that says, that provides an unless, I mean, I would rather just say it's a day and stick with that. But I think the alternative would be to say it's a day unless I don't know, I guess unless, but you're not gonna know the previous town meeting what the schedule is for the following year, so you can't say unless voted upon at the previous meeting. And so then it's like up to the select board's discretion, I guess, and I don't really feel like that is, like, if you're expecting to go to the meeting and you always know it's on Sunday, that's a lot easier than having to wait and see when the select board's gonna decide to hold it.
I actually like the Saturday or Sunday
Yeah.
language.
Yeah. I wish there was a way, because we're only tied to Sunday because of a random basketball schedule at BUHS. You know what I mean? I hate for us to do our entire charter because of a basketball tournament at BUHS that we're hosting now, but it may not be hosted there again. So I think I get what you're saying, Hannah. I'm just trying to figure out, is there a way that we're not tying like future us?
And we can't say just the weekend because that's vague still.
But I don't think that addresses,
Right.
it doesn't address Hannah's concern.
But
We've literally heard people say, like, I plan my schedule around knowing that I have to be available that day. And so if they can't know what that, like, yes, it's a Saturday or Sunday, but that can make a difference.
I know. And again, our problem is, this is not this issue is because of a basketball tournament. You know what I mean? It's not because of anything that the town is doing. It's because of a basketball tournament.
Oh, it's regular.
And if we did the kind of language that said it's always going to be on Sunday, except when it's determined at the prior town meeting that it's going to be some other time, you're quite right, Hannah, that you won't know a year ahead of time
Right.
whether or not the Saturday would even be possible unless there's a structural change in how the state does high school basketball. So I think this language, I think having the discretion of the board is good. This language does require that all of us who want to participate in the meeting plan to hold both of those days instead of just one day. But we do know, not just a year ahead of time, but forever and ever, that this is
It'll be that
how the system would
weekend.
work. And then we would find out around the 1st of December, if not sooner, each year from the select board in the warning of the
I
meeting.
think the basketball schedule comes out
Sooner than that, which is why I'm saying we might.
in July or something like
Right,
that.
so we might all know as a community sooner, and the warning would make it all official in early December. And then we can free up the one day of that weekend. But it feels to me like for charter purposes, this is our best way to proceed.
Just a note, if you insert the word available, the first available Saturday or Sunday, it then becomes flexible.
But what is available, I mean, I think that's a little vague.
Well, it's gotta be within the time window that the clerk and the town government said
Right.
that they need.
And the available is
After the third Monday.
relative to the basketball schedule, you want to put that in? I don't know. No, I think it doesn't help.
We could build a new convention hall, or the school could burn down, there's a lot.
Sure, exactly, right. And then it
And
can
so-
just, it can be routinely on the one day instead of having to have an either or. But for right now, in the circumstances that we all know exist,
Yeah,
the either or feels like it's advantageous to the community,
right.
to me.
And that, yeah. I mean, so is the majority of us okay with leaving it like
Please
that?
be quiet in the audience so we can just negate.
Because I'm saying something so profound.
Yes.
Do we see any other way around this other than leaving it like this and leaving it?
No, as I said, I like the language.
Is there a
Saturday or
fourth person
Sunday.
who likes the language?
I'm okay with the language.
Okay, so can we keep
I
it?
don't have a strong opinion. It doesn't bother me
Okay.
enough.
Okay,
Unless I can hear like a stronger opinion about it legally or something.
yeah, okay. All right,
So
so,
I'm again hearing 4.5.
yeah,
So I'd like to move that we leave this language as written in this, that our intention, without being specific to the language, our intention is to keep flexible the Saturday or Sunday approach to what will be in this paragraph.
Okay, so Peter moves that we keep flexible the Saturday or Sunday language or approach that is in paragraph A, section 1. So all those in favor of doing that signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
5-1. All right. Okay, then we go to second page, Article 3, Powers of the People referendum. And the issue there was 5 days. If it's on a Saturday, it means that if you count it out, it would have to be on that Thursday. And I know it's more complex than that. Is 5 days enough? Is everybody okay with that? If we add the word business or the words business days, petition shall be filed within 5 business days after the adjournment of the meeting, that makes it go up until Friday.
I like that.
You like that?
And why was 5 chosen? Was that in consultation? I have to believe in consultation with Hillary.
I did. I consulted with Hillary. The thing is, and this is the thing that has been, when Maya brought up the last week, when we were looking at having the thing the 15th or 16th, and Martin Luther King Day is the 17th. And you'd think it'd be easy. Oh, we'll just do the open town meeting on the 23rd, a week later. But we have this referendum provision in the charter, the current charter and the charter that we drafted September 21st, that only applies to articles talked about at open town meeting, in the in-person meeting. That if somebody wants to say, wait a second, I want to take that particular article and have it go to a townwide vote, they have 10 days to circulate a petition and get 5%, they have to get 5% of the voters to sign a petition to get that particular article to go on a townwide vote. If you shorten that to 5 days, it works for Hillary, that it all works.
And I know, so folks are focusing a lot on the fact that the budget is a main issue of open town meeting, but there are other warned articles.
Yes.
Could you attempt to remind us all of what some of the other warned articles of open town meeting would be?
Well, Hillary and I talked about this, and right now, currently, we approve the attorney and the town clerk and stuff like that. So if we didn't want Hillary to be town clerk, somebody could circulate a petition and
Tax
not have her.
tax exemptions for properties is another one. What else is there that's not
The,
budget related?
The whatchamacallit, the trailer park, the
Right, Mountain Home, the Mountain Home item.
and the downtown business district.
Yeah.
Right, although that goes into the budget. So
That goes
that
into the
would be a
budget.
budget related item.
Yeah. So there's nothing, we can go
The
look at the warrant.
likelihood that this would be picked up by somebody is, again, not trying to find all the contingencies, but it is
Yes.
pretty small given the warned articles for open town meeting.
Yes.
And so then putting into proportion what is needed to readdress.
I think that's exactly right. And this still does empower the people for those things that we can't predict, that, from year to year, there are sometimes one-offs. It's not just the routine stuff. And so anytime that there's a one-off that doesn't impact the budget, that also would be in play for potentially being petitioned to be put on the ballot.
And if 2%, I think I tried rough math on it, is what, 180? Less than
Approximately.
200?
That's right, less than 200 people.
And given that folks are still getting used to the open invitation for an open town meeting, and that at least in 26 squeaked in around 200, that is likely proportional to the work that needs done too. So the percentage is fine for me. 5 seems very squished, but 180 is also.
And I think that the trade-off is we get to put the budget on a townwide, automatically goes on a townwide vote,
Yeah.
and that's the timing.
On
that-
town meeting day.
On town meeting day, when there's going to be a high population of people going to vote. And I had a conversation, it feels like it was a week ago, it was just yesterday with Hillary about this again. And that is, what works best for them. Because, they get the candidate consent forms and then the thing goes to the printer.
Not to belabor the details, but if somebody were to circulate a petition, they would actually need to have sat down with the town clerk, have official language before they can circulate for signatures. So that means on that first Monday, they would hopefully have time with Hillary and flush it out in X amount of time, hopefully that day. And so it's not like within open town meeting, they could start circulating the petition right away.
That's right.
Right, correct.
Unless they planned ahead and prepared a petition and talked to her ahead of time because they were anticipating if this one goes down, I want to be ready to put it out to an Australian ballot vote. I'm not suggesting that would happen. I think that your prior comment is right on, that this clause is likely to be very rarely exercised. But yes, in the more likely scenario, somebody would meet with her right away on Monday. And because of the change that we're talking about with business days, it'd be 4 days instead of 3 days beyond that for them to get the 180 signatures.
So if we add, is such petition shall be filed within 5 business days after the adjournment of the meeting, does that help?
If we said
That was the intent.
If we said calendar days, if they met with Hillary on Monday, 5 days would be
It's the Friday.
Friday.
It would be Friday when there was a Sunday meeting. It would be Thursday when there was a Saturday meeting, which is what brought this topic up. And
So we
it
said-
seems easy enough to address that with this one word,
Business
business.
days, and it gives the people till the Friday, even if the meeting's on a
Yeah.
Saturday.
Because you
That's
can't work on it on Sunday without
Right.
Hillary, who's not working.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. So does that address that issue? Yes.
Do you want a motion?
Now, I make a motion that we add the word 5 business days
Yeah.
after the adjournment of the meeting.
Okay, Maya moves that we add the words business days. So it would say such petition shall be filed within 5 business days after the adjournment of the meeting. Okay, any more discussion on that?
No, and we're going to keep the 2%.
Yes. Yes, if that's what people want.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? 5-1. And then I just want to address what Hannah talked about with the other language. It goes, this section shall not apply to articles related to general fund budget, then in parentheses C. I actually did talk to Bob about that, and that's one of the things on my list, how we word that. He had made a suggestion that in the text we put accepting the budget article. So I have that on my list of things. How do we, he's on board of us wording it in a way. It's just figuring out how we word it. So that'll probably, after my conversation with him, we'll figure out if that orange is still worded like that, because I worded it that way. And he worded it another way.
But we want to make this statement. We want to
Exactly.
differentiate
Right.
that this applies to all the things that aren't part of the budget.
Right.
And that the budget items are dealt with
Yes.
as it's reflected in the rest.
Yes, and Bob understood that based on my thing, and he just had a different, I had a more civilian language, do you know what I mean? Than legal, so that's on the list to talk to him about. All right, so now we have budget, article, we're just gonna do the part of Article 5 that's right here, and then we'll go back to the big part. And if we want to, and these are where the dates come in.
Article 6.
I'm sorry, Article 6, finances. So we do a new Section 1 budget process, because it just lays out the process, nothing about rejection yet. And the first date would, if it's under January, we're saying annually, not later than October 15th, the town manager should propose a general fund budget for the following fiscal year. And no one had any issues with October 15th, so I think we can, we can go on. And no one had any issues with December 31st as well. Now we get to Finance Committee under Section 2, which won't be Section 2 anymore because it's going to be a new Section 2, but the Finance Committee, and it's the issue of not later than, it was February 20th, if we were doing this under the normal schedule. So we're saying not later than 10 days prior to the open town meeting. And we've heard concerns from the Finance Committee. I just want to say, I hear the Finance Committee, and I totally appreciate what you folks do. Unless we shorten that, I mean, that's the only way to go. But does that give the public enough time to absorb what you folks are, the work that you're doing? So I think that's the balance here, And I feel bad. I mean, Peter and I went back and forth on this, feeling like, we don't want to put pressure on you folks, but we are. Not because we want to, but.
What if you had 3 extra days? What if we said, no, I'm
7
serious,
days.
7 days, and then you could finish,
Yeah.
and then you'd have 3 days to copy.
I have also, in spite of the fact that I complained about that, I've also been in many professional situations where I've had the time cut in half, and you figure it out. So we are working earlier. We're doing stuff now that we didn't used to do. And I mean, yeah, if you want to give us 3 more days, great. Yeah, I'd like that. But I'm not against what you're saying on that basis. I think we'll have to work differently, and I think that I can imagine doing things early, certain things, in the report earlier, and then changing them at the last minute because something changed. I mean, like this last year, there were a couple of things that were significant that changed at the last minute. But no, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Peter.
Acknowledging that downside to what we've proposed, I think switching to 7 days has the problem of that falling on a weekend, either a Saturday or a Sunday. And the 10 days prior would be, near the end of a week. And the committee gets to plan ahead. Yes, there could be a crunch of things at the last minute that makes it very difficult. I understand that is true and could happen. It feels to me like, since we're establishing norms and expectations in the charter, that the norm and expectation ought to be that this is 10 days ahead for the benefit of the voters. I feel like we're going to create a much more confusing situation if the deadline for this report falls on a weekend day. Yeah. And is 3 less days for the voters to be able to review it. And that weighed against the committee having to plan that you don't have those 3 days available when you're doing your, the body of your work over the course of the year. Feels to me like in that trade-off, for me, I land on 10 days.
Yeah, I'm fine with 10 days, just asking what would happen.
I'm in this total section, I'm more curious about the legal reason for shall versus may. And I wonder if that would be helpful in either instance of preparing the report in prior to the open town meeting and as well for Australia.
Yeah. And the shall was already there. So maybe Hannah wants to explain the shall versus may, because that was language that was in the September 1st, 2025 charter.
Sure.
Shall is mandatory, may is discretionary. So if you put may, then they wouldn't be required to put out a report at all.
Oof. thinking. I like shall personally, but since we're electing people to do something.
Yeah, and so yeah, just wanting to make sure that that fits the goal as well. And so yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with either. I just want to make sure that like going forward for the things we can't anticipate, which feels better. And yes, if the shall is there and if the report is nothing to report, then that's still a report.
Right. Okay.
May I?
Yeah.
Because what's in front of us tonight on finances is the section that's specific about the budget, then it's not reflected in that document. If we look back at our September 1st document, my clear recollection is that we chose shall for this because it's the once a year, momentous decision about the budget, and that there's language in the what we're proposing around the reconstitution of the finance committee, that they be elected and that they have certain authority to look into all the various aspects of town finances. I recall that there is this shall, and then there's that the finance committee may also publish reports on other topics throughout the year.
It's the next sentence.
Is it?
Yeah.
Ah,
See, the next
sorry.
sentence
It
says
is
they
here.
may publish.
May publish additional reports to address topics of financial importance, including those that extend beyond the town's general fund budget. So we were pretty intentional back in September about shall on the budget and may on everything else.
Okay.
Yeah,
that make
and
sense?
in the September draft, we had, well, the date's different, but no later than February 20th,
Yeah.
the Finance Committee shall publish
Yeah.
a report
Yeah. Yeah.
to advise and make recommendations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we already had shall.
Yeah. The only thing that changed in this was the date and adding the other thing. The black text is what we already have.
Yeah.
Okay, so a week okay with keeping 10. It was the finance committee that flagged it, so we're okay with it. Okay. What I want to do is skip over the human services thing for right now because this language is based on how we end the process, if there's ever an end. So if we can go back to that.
In the finance section.
Yeah, so let's go just to the finance section. So it's the draft Article 6 finances, draft changes. So the budget process, again, it's budget process. We're gonna put the date in for January where it says, or new date. So the January, you know what I mean, the dates that we just agreed upon will go in. Nobody had any issues with that. There were no issues with adding in the B of the combined process language. Where we are is with E. But that should be simple now because it's going to say the final budget amount adopted at open town meeting shall be placed on the Australian ballot on the first Tuesday in March.
Wait a minute.
Finance part, right here.
Annually, but the new date.
Right,
Should be October 15th.
correct, right.
You said January.
No, I'm saying under the January model, the date is different. That's all I
Yeah,
meant.
it's-
Yes. Yeah,
But the new
Yeah.
date is October 15th.
yeah.
That's correct.
Correct, that is correct. And the other new date is December 31st. This in B. And in E, we're going with alternative 1. So the final budget amount adopted at the open town meeting shall be placed on the Australian ballot on the first Tuesday in March. That's how that's going to read. With a caveat there that Bob and I still need to talk to Bob. So the second E is going out. I still need to talk to Bob. We're on the same page, whether it's total budget or final budget. I just want to get from him that we're on the same page and that we're saying the same thing.
But substantively,
We're on the
we've
same
decided.
page. Right, it's the final number.
Can I just say that I think the reason it's not final is because it's not final.
Bob wants final.
And we're thinking total.
We were gonna put total amount. When I gave him the language, he said it should say final budget amount, not total budget amount. So that's what I wanna talk to him about.
Yeah, you'll revisit it.
Yeah, like, we're on the same page. But we were doing this via email, so I haven't had a chance to,
We agree that it's not final
Yeah.
until it's
Right.
been adopted by the
Right.
Australian ballot.
right. So
it should say total,
right,
probably.
but he must have a logic, and I want to talk to him about the logic.
Yeah.
But we're on the same page of what we intend. We're just on different pages on the actual adjective.
Yep.
Okay, so here's F. Here's the one that we need to decide. The budget shall be considered adopted unless rejected by 60% of the town's legal voters voting on the question at the election, or the budget shall be considered adopted after an affirmative vote by a majority of the town's legal voters voting on the question at the election. And these are two different things, as we know, so we have to pick one.
The second one is less confusing to me. Personally.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we couldn't hear that.
I said the second one is less confusing to me personally.
Thank you.
Yeah, Peter.
Thanks. First of all, I agree with that. The second one is less confusing. There is potential confusion with the first one. I do think that if we chose it, that in the implementation of the new system, it would become clear to people right away what this means, and we would all go forward and understand it and function that way. I want to offer an explanation. I know there's people in the room and other people in the community who have strongly disagree with the recommendation for the 60%. I respect that. We don't agree about, we as a community don't agree about everything ever. And on this particular topic, we've had a lot of communication. We've heard discussion. I'm sure we're going to hear some more tonight about this. Some of what I'm about to say, I've said before in those prior conversations that we've had here in this room, but since we're making a decision tonight, feels appropriate to frame why is this even a question before us, and then see where we land as a commission. I believe, and I won't attempt to speak for Kate here, we've done collaborative work on bringing this forward to you, but what I'm about to say is my opinion. My opinion is that contrary to what some other people have said about the March 3rd election, I think we did learn things from the March 3rd election. I don't think there's absolute clarity. There's rarely absolute clarity to election results, except in, who got elected in a two-person race, right? But when there's a question before the voters, sometimes there's some ambiguity to it. Acknowledging that that's true, we have operated now for months on the premise that the results were meaningful, that it mattered that the voters, by majority vote, determined that we wouldn't have RTM anymore, and that those same voters that same day declared by wider majority votes that they desired both Australian ballot and open town meeting. And so we've gone through a complicated process. We're getting to some good, clear outcomes that will move this process forward. But we're having the whole more complicated conversation and landing in a place that in fact does create a combined system because we're respecting the results of the election where the voters said to us, we like both of these things. And I think that it is equally true. Well, again, I acknowledge that not everybody in this room or elsewhere agrees with this. For me, it is equally true that if we're respecting the results of the election, it's important for us to note that in the very same people casting their ballot on the very same day, 95 more said yes to open town meeting than said yes to Australian ballot. And 104 fewer said no to open town meeting than said no to Australian ballot. And so if we're traveling under these results indicating to us preferences of our community that we should respect in the creation of this new system, it feels important to me that we have differentiation between the authority of open town meeting and the Australian ballot vote. I think it's great that we're going to have an Australian ballot vote. I think that that's adding to our democratic process in a good and healthy way. And I think it's, for all the reasons I've said many times, and I won't belabor it here other than just to say, again, with due respect for those who don't agree with me, being in a room matters. Being in a room, hearing one another, wrestling through something, maybe being a person who has heard the arguments during the open town meeting and votes a different way on the vote of the matter than I thought I was going to vote when I walked in the room. I think all of those things are important in community life and in strengthening our community especially when we disagree. And that doesn't happen in the ballot process. In the ballot process, we each individually cast a vote on a piece of paper and then the votes get tallied up, but we're not working with each other to come through a more complicated process to an endpoint. Like I've said, I think it's good we're landing in a place where both of these pieces will be in our combined system. But for me, the 60% threshold is important because it is a measure that says that in the room, we did a more complicated thing together and had an outcome. And for that outcome to be rejected by the broader voters of the town, it should be able to be rejected by the broader voters of the town. But I think it's important that there be a threshold there that has to be met. It's very common in our systems around, in state systems and the national system, that there be ratification votes or other types of votes where it's not a 50-50 question. There's an action that has been taken that is, in order to overturn it, requires a supermajority. This isn't a new idea. I think it's an idea that is applicable to our circumstances. And I wouldn't feel this way about it, despite my own personal feelings about these two types of, two methods of approving a budget. I wouldn't feel this way about the differentiation if not for the results of the vote. I think the results of the vote, if we're respecting it in the first instance to create a combined system, we should respect it in the second instance to differentiate the thresholds for voting. So one last thing, I think that valid points have been made about access to open town meeting, that it's not just a question of like who's willing to commit the time and show up for it. Some people actually have barriers to entry there, and I think that that's true, and I think that we should continue as a community to identify those and address those and make it possible for people to participate in the meeting.
I'm with Peter. I've thought about this ever since it was first proposed. And I think that there should be a limit. I mean, a threshold. It's like, maybe it's like the House and the Senate, where the House generally votes by majority, and the Senate often has a 60 vote limit to pass. And that's the way I ended up looking at it. And I hadn't thought about the fact that it's respecting the vote. More people did vote for open town meeting than Australian ballot, and that's a very interesting new thing you brought up, Peter. And so I am in favor of the 60%.
Can you speak a little to why it's rejected by 60% instead of approved?
Yeah, so
that's the hard part.
that's upon Bob's advice that the question will have to be phrased in the negative, that it can't be phrased as
Approved by 40%.
yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
What he's saying is if the 60% threshold is the thing that we're putting in here, now I suppose we could ask him. We haven't asked him that question of whether it could be phrased in the affirmative that the budget shall be adopted if more than 40% of the voters at Australian town meeting vote to adopt. He was pretty strong with us that
Yeah, it had to be.
the fact that we're looking at this as an act of ratification, that it would need to be phrased as more than 60% are required, or 60% or more is required in order to reject.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, that in the transition, that would be a point of confusion. I think that we would, once we got used to voting that way, I think that would not be a point of confusion except for new voters as population changes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Troy or Hannah?
I mean, I'll say for sure the vote in affirmative is easier to understand. I also see it is an interesting model of comparison to think about it, at the federal level, certainly, but that what is the vote at that point in March is of January's actions,
Correct.
not of the select boards.
Correct.
That's right.
And that the complicated work of sitting with folks in a room, again, access, I absolutely appreciate, and I hope that we continue to find the avenue already taking steps at this point. I apologize, that's my bedtime alarm. Already taking steps within what we have to include more folks, because RTM was limiting. It made it so only certain elected people who went around and got signatures and got their name on a ballot are able to sit in the room. I am tending to lean towards the 60%. For now.
Hannah, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I don't think it's going to come as any surprise that I disagree, and I don't see why one vote counts a different amount than another vote, especially when there are people that aren't able or willing to attend an open town meeting. It doesn't mean that their vote should count any less when they get to cast it. This is part of why I'm opposed to this whole dual vote system, because it just seems to be adding extra steps. And again, going back to voter confusion, if it's a 60%, then people are going to vote no. But if not enough people vote no, then it doesn't pass. And people are going to be like, well, I voted no. Why didn't it? Why do we still have this budget that I didn't agree with? And the majority of people didn't agree with. And the voting in the negative, we heard a lot of feedback that was confusing on the RTM discontinue vote, which was not strictly in the negative, but the way it was phrased, people found confusing. And I think they would find this equally confusing. And I don't see why we would give this extra power to the OTM when we just discontinued RTM for basically the reason that we wanted more people to access voting in town on these matters. And so it just seems to be a step in the wrong direction. And I don't see why we should be disenfranchising one group of voters for the benefit of another. And again, I don't think that you can take anything away from those two votes in March and say that this is doing what people want. And I don't see why we should have a supermajority to overturn the vote at the open town meeting.
Tom.
Thank you.
And I forget, everybody should say who they are. I realize we're like 3 hours into this and I did not remind people.
Franks, Brattleboro resident. The 60%, I mean, I'm gonna get my hat. just so you know why I started this, was one person, one vote. One person, one vote. Not one person, 5, 6, 3/8, 13.8% of a vote, depending on how you do the math. If you have a 60% requirement on the Australian ballot, you reduce the value of the votes that show up, the people who show up for Australian ballot. You're basically saying that their votes are worth less. Peter already pointed out there was a 95 vote difference between the two. What Peter didn't mention was, thanks to the confusion of the ballot, a minimum of 377 voters. That's 15% of the voters voted yes on both Articles 3 and 4. Doing the rest of the math, a maximum, and I'm less confident in this, but I think it's right, and no one's proven me wrong, 512, or 21% of the voters voted yes on both articles. The bottom line was the ballot was confusing. Taking anything from it that is based on a margin of 4% of the voters, that's 95 people you talk to, 4% of the voters, and yet that is chump change and noise, especially when you have a confusing ballot. Secondly, another point, the supermajority that you referenced, there is no other town budget issue that is a supermajority. The simple majority is the basic default in Vermont law. It's statutory in a lot of places. Some of the things that are required for a supermajority in Vermont are very special cases not related to a process where the people of the town are voting on their budget. They're not comparable. There's a 60% is just, it's not fair, it's not equitable, and no matter what you do, you're trying to adjust for the various barriers to participation. You cannot get someone in a nursing home who may be perfectly lucid to an open town meeting. Can't happen. No matter how hard we try, we cannot eliminate all the barriers to participation in an open town meeting. I'm not even going to the fact that no one who's ever been an advocate of open town meeting has ever had any peer-reviewed studies that show that A, they build community, or B, that they actually result in better decisions. It's a feel-good thing. We've done it for years. It's a Vermont tradition. It was a Vermont tradition when we were farmers and there were 300 people in our town and we were stir crazy in March and we went to open town meeting, and guess what? Who got the vote? The men. I've been all over this. There is a disenfranchisement, that word Hannah brought up. It's also kind of very much like a poll test. Are you a good character? Can you show up and spend an entire day at open town meeting? Oh yes, your vote is worth more than somebody who wants to fill out a ballot at their own time, remotely, by absentee ballot. You're disenfranchising active duty servicemen. You're disenfranchised by this matter. You're putting less value on a vast majority of the town who cannot get here, or if they can, they have to make such a great sacrifice that it's not worth it to them. You have to be able to walk away from a job that's barely keeping you alive in a town where 50% of the people are housing cost burdened. That's a day of income. You have to have the ability to provide.
Hey, Tom, will you wrap? I want to hear from other people.
Okay,
so
wrapping it up.
Yeah.
60% is a non-starter. It's anti-democratic. It is disenfranchisement, and it smacks of Jim Crow, no matter how you cut it. It's making some people special because they have the resources to show up, sit through. I talked to a couple former RTM members who cannot attend those anymore because physically they cannot attend. There was one person here until an hour and a half ago who wanted to speak to a 60% issue. Long day, traveling. There's only so much you can do to try and get your point across. And by the way, you're belittling the people who vote by Australian ballot by saying, this process informs you have no idea how people inform themselves before they vote. So that's enough for me. Thank you.
Why don't we go to David Levenbach, who's had his hand up.
Thank you. David Levenbach, District 9. Mr. Elwell made a number of good points about the deliberative process of open town meeting. Australian ballot is a fairly blunt instrument. It doesn't provide any information. There's no deliberation. And so I think the 60% number is not inappropriate. And I'll also say, with no offense to Ms. Clarice, that all institutions have rules. These would be our rules. Rules are not neutral, that's true. But I think the argument that the bluntness of Australian ballot voting to reject is just a very blunt instrument, and I don't think it should succeed very often. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I just, this is not a rule, this is a right. You have the right to vote. That's all I want to say.
I can't remember if it was either Neil or Timothy who put their hand up first. Did you put your hand up, Neil, or was I dreaming?
Yeah.
If I was dreaming, you don't have to say anything.
Oh, thanks for being awake. I'm falling asleep. My name is Neil Manders. I'm out in West Brattleboro. One thing I think we need to talk about is that the final vote, or the Australian ballot, having had no discussion whatsoever and taken out of an environmental vacuum, is obviously ridiculous. You can't have people that just suddenly know all of the information that's going on in town and make a valid decision about that. I came to the school board a couple of years ago and said, you people really need to get education out to the population and to the civics here so that they know what they're voting on. When we had the vote in March, that was the most ridiculous piece of ballot that I think I've ever seen in my life. The only thing that came out of that was there wasn't a yes/no vote for RTM. The rest of it was garbage. People didn't know where they were voting for necessarily. Many people voted doubly when they thought they were voting for one thing and voting for another. So to base a procedure that's going to last for the next 10 years on a 95 number, I think is a wrong thing to do. I think you need to step back from that. I came down, I shouldn't say this because when I did this years ago in Spofford, they kicked me out of the meeting. I came down from Canada. And in the Canadian sort of sense, it seems to me that what we're looking at is I have a right to vote. I came in here, I took my papers, I did what I was supposed to do, and I have this right to be able to vote. I don't have a demand that I need to do something else besides that vote. I have a responsibility to do that. So I would really encourage, I know that's not part of the charter to inform and education, but I would really encourage that somehow or other we notify the select board, we meaning the civilization, not you, notify the select board that this needs to be an educational process and we need to get people in here to vote. If we don't, this town is going to go down in about 5 years. For lots of reasons that I won't get into right now, but we will be in serious trouble if we don't get people involved. So I hope you do the 50-50 and forget the 60. And I also wonder whether the legislature will even pass the 60 when we go up for it.
I want to go to Stephen and then we'll come back to the room. Stephen Patterson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I would like to really reiterate what the gentleman just said, that the March question around whether we should be doing open town meeting or Australian ballot, I have over 100 scientific publications to my name. That survey that was given in that town election was an F-. That would be laughed out of the room. There's no way anybody could understand what you were really asking by town meeting or Australian ballot. So whatever results came from that, they should be just discarded out of hand. I can't be more serious about that. My opinion in terms of what I think should happen, irrespective of the vote, I don't know why we're not talking about open town meeting for information exchange. I don't know why in this era of AI, we are not having a very obvious, elegant solution of consumer information of the pros and cons of each ballot initiative that would take minutes to do now and review by the committee. But why aren't we talking about that? So open town meeting to discuss and debate, followed by synopsis from AI, reviewed by the committee, and then Australian ballot. I cannot agree more that open town meeting selects for activists, it selects for unemployed, it selects for the human service industry against those who are working, those who are dealing with families, those who have real hardcore responsibilities. So you have a biased sample that is a failure, absolute miscarriage of democracy. If you're saying only the people who can rock up for a whole week meeting, that is laughable that you say you have representative democracy out of open town meeting. So again, to reiterate, March, that was preposterous, what was written on that page, and I voted. No way that was valid, whatever you got out of it. B, you should have both. Why are we even talking about this? Open town meeting to share ideas. Synopsis guided by AI to clean up the process of sharing the pros and cons of each ballot, and then Australian ballot. And don't call it Australian ballot. That's a ridiculous term. People don't understand it. One person, one vote. To allow people to really vote, regardless of whether or not they are unemployed activists who are trying to drive up funding for this or that, or actual hardworking family taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Timothy.
Good evening, Timothy Bell now. Your proposed 60% supermajority to reject a budget by Australian ballot gets democracy backwards. A budget approved by just a few hundred open town meeting attendees, roughly 2 or 3% of Brattleboro's 9,200 registered voters, would be protected against rejection by a simple majority of the entire town. That creates two classes of voters: those who can spend 10 to 12 hours at a meeting, and everyone else: seniors, caregivers, hourly workers, people with disabilities whose votes only count if they can muster a supermajority. I support January open town meeting and March Australian ballot with a straight 50% plus one vote. One person, one vote with no exceptions. And just to put it out there, if everyone in this group starts aging and we're no longer able to get to OTM, does that mean that we somehow care less about the town that we've built? I don't think so. So I think we need to really think on that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Chris Mays, and then we'll come back to the room.
Sorry, I have my hand up, but I don't know how that happened.
Oh. Were you just saying hi?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Randy.
Hi, Randy Blodgett. Just in sitting through a lot of these meetings, and you guys obviously have 2 more years on me than the year plus whatever I've been sitting in meetings, and you know I have an opinion, I know other people have opinions. I think it just disenfranchises everybody. It's confusing. We need more voters, not less voters. We have enough problems getting voters in March the way it is. If you look at what the votership is in August and November, or even a presidential election, which somehow that's more important to people than their own town, but that's another argument to talk about, education. We need to have a simple majority. We need to have both things equal. If not, I'll be voting no on the charter. I'll be telling everybody I know to vote on the charter. I will be out with signs. I will be picketing. I will go to Mount Pillier and ask the legislature to also not approve it in the form it's in. Because we've sat here, no one else is here hardly ever. We've continued to talk to people. We ask their opinion. We've talked to hundreds of people with our petition, hundreds of people again, and trying to learn what they're thinking on this, because just to make sure we're not the only crazy ones in the room. But we can't have a negative question. It's too confusing. You're going to drive people not to want to vote. They're going to be like, why is this so hard? Just let us vote. And I have one other problem. Our federal policy, the smaller of the two House bodies, is a higher threshold because it's a smaller number, which would be more like OTM than Australian ballot. So let's put 60% if you want on that, and let's have simple majority on the larger thing if you're comparing it to the federal government. Thank you. Please vote for a simple majority.
So we've heard from everybody in the public, we've heard from ourselves.
Have you heard from Denise?
No, Denise said she's likes the other, the second option is less confusing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
don't know
Yeah.
what I'm voting for
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, yeah. So where would we like to go from here on this one?
Trying to look at what's left. Make sure.
Well, do you want to, we could come back to that in a second and go to the, no, we're going to do it tonight. We're doing it tonight, everybody.
This is our meeting.
Right. We're not leaving here without this settled. I'm just saying if we want a breather and go on and look at these other two things. Do we want to do that and then come back to F? Or is everybody ready to go?
I'm ready to
with
vote. I don't know how we do this, but like,
Yeah.
with an either or like this.
Yeah. Well, that's what, somebody has to pick one and make a motion to pick that one. You know what I mean? Like, and we make a motion that we do the majority or the 60%, and then we'll vote and we'll know which one passes.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we have the budget adopted by Australian ballot. Well, no, wait a minute.
Like these two, like, you want to use these two as your guide for
Yeah.
the language?
That the budget should be considered adopted unless 60% of the town's legal voters
Unless rejected by 60.
reject it, unless it's rejected by 60%.
Okay.
Voting on the question at the election, not
Yes.
60% of all the voters.
Right.
Right. And that language, again, whatever we use, may change a little bit because Bob wrote it as 60% of every voter. I was writing it as 60, I wrote it like this, 60% of just the people voting. And I just want to clarify with Bob that it's
Yeah,
okay.
my motion would be that it's 60% of the people who vote,
Yes, on the question. Yes,
who voted on the
Yeah.
question.
yes.
Two quick things. I think if this passes, when you talk with Bob, it would also be helpful for you to revisit the question of phrasing it in the affirmative instead of in the negative and see whether that's possible in some manner. And then I don't want to speak to the merits. Those of us in this room, especially who've been in this conversation together for a while, have expressed our points of view on the merits. I do want to speak to the value of the election that we had. I heard you and the statistics that were presented about why, and on an admittedly confusing ballot, right? Like there was the potential for any individual voter to be confused, and also a tremendous amount of public attention paid to the questions before the vote. So in terms of us collectively as a community going in and casting our ballot in a more informed manner, I think that I don't think that we should reject the results from March based on assuming people didn't know what they were voting on, number one. And number two, if we do think that's necessary, if collectively we came to a place that said, oh my gosh, these questions were so complicated, and how can you differentiate based on only 4% difference in the vote, then my question would be, how can we accept the outcome that RTM got rejected by actually less than 2% of the vote? So there was a 57 vote difference on the RTM question, which was phrased in the negative, by the way. And so I accept both the RTM outcome and both of the other two outcomes. And for the reasons I described earlier, I think if we're respecting the three separate pieces of that vote in March, then there is reason to believe the voters of the community that day were expressing a preference for the open town meeting. And nevertheless, we've gone to great lengths to incorporate the Australian ballot into the process we're going to recommend.
Yeah, Tom?
Your argument overlooks I'm Frank's Brattleboro voter. Your argument overlooks the fact that the Article 2 was a standalone article, yes, no. It was not effectively a ranked choice for some form of town meeting, which happened with the intentional advocacy for a no, yes vote. In other words, just vote yes on any kind of open town meeting. You're also ignoring the fact that 317 people, greater than the margin difference, voted yes on both. So you cannot say that, the will of the people makes open town meeting even stronger than Australian ballot. I think the clear thing is the town, you could say the voters of the town voted for Australian ballot and for open town meeting. There's nothing you can say about how they are valued, weighted, and there's nothing you can say in response to the barriers except, we'll try to address them. Trying to address them is not, the best intent is not possible, just because of the list of the barriers.
Yeah.
One of the issues is that, how many registered voters are there in Brattleboro? There are about 9,000?
9,200 some.
No more.
And there were
2,400, give or take. 2,442, actually.
who voted, which is a very small percentage of the registered voters. So I wanted to point that out to you,
It's
that you're,
It's a normal turnout for March, and you're assuming that Australian ballot is less valid. Okay, what was your turnout for open town meeting? It was 400, give or take, compared to the 9,200. So open town meeting gets much less participation.
Well, can I
apologize for having opened this Pandora box? What I was trying to speak to was,
We're totally off
if we're
track.
going to respect the ballot, I think we need to respect the whole ballot. If we're going to agree that the ballot was just too confusing and doesn't really tell us anything, then that's where we land. Picking and choosing what we like about it, I think, is not helpful to getting to
We are
a constructive decision.
respecting the whole ballot by giving both. The only town in Vermont
I agree with that.
that's going to have a voting open town meeting and a voting
And on that piece, we agree.
and a voting Australian ballot, which effectively means that the people who can attend an open town meeting get to vote twice on the same issue. They get to pass a budget by a simple majority of 1. Assuming the turnout stays where it is, 200. So 201 can pass the budget. It takes something on the order of 1,600 to reject, and those 200 who pass it could be part of the pieces. It's just, it's bad enough, in my opinion. But, I'm willing to say, okay, we'll have an open town meeting that actually gets to amend the budget, so they got a lot of power. Some of your previous arguments were, gives them a reason to show up.
We were ready to vote, I think.
All right, then why did Peter go after this?
Well, I know, that's right.
Only to speak to the election, not to the merits.
Yes. Does anyone else on the commission have any questions or comments before we vote? Because Maya has made a motion. So the motion is,
that the budget shall be considered adopted unless rejected by 60% of the town's legal voters voting on the question at the election.
okay. So unless anyone on the commission has any more to say, we will take a vote. So all those in favor of Maya's motion signify by saying aye. Aye. What's that?
4-2.
All those opposed?
Nay.
2. Okay. Okay. Now let's move on to the budget rejection thing. the first thing we flagged, or the only thing here that we flagged, well, no, there's more we flagged, but is if the Australian ballot vote results in a rejection of the budget, the select board shall warn a special open town meeting to be held within 40 days of the Australian ballot, for the purpose of considering the rejected budget. So we had two things about this. The first one was the last sentence, for the purpose of considering the rejected budget. Joy was recommending putting something into the effect instead of that, saying for the purpose of considering the town's general fund budget, making it softer as opposed to negative.
Would you accept further considering, since it's already been considered? They're going to go back and further consider the budget?
Is it further consider or reconsider? And maybe that's not even right either, but and maybe it's not even a reconsideration, it's they could put back forth the exact same budget.
Right.
So just for the consideration.
That was the question I was trying to get at earlier, is that because this is considering the rejected budget, in my mind, that you would just immediately start with the number that, first of all, OTM had already approved and had been rejected. And that just seems to be getting into an echo chamber. Like, I think there needs to be another step in the process to put out a revised budget for the revote.
So that's where the second thing comes in. Do we add language that the select board needs to do something? Or we give them the option of doing something? Does that help with
Two separate questions, though. We're talking about the potential of adding a whole separate paragraph that speaks to the select board's role.
Mm-hmm.
But on this first part of when it gets sent to open town meeting, back to open town meeting, calibrating, what are they going to do? I think they're going to further consider the budget, right? Because they have already considered the budget. I'm happy with reconsider instead of consider, but I think it's either reconsider or further consider, one or the other.
There will be words that are said at an open town meeting that hopefully expresses clearly the intention of, you're right, you're asking for 50 million, and we're just gonna, where you can't even give you a digit here, just figure it out. No. So like whatever, the wordsmithing, it feels a little beyond me right now, but in essence, it's that I would say it goes back to the select board to figure it out, whether it's the same number or a different number.
So the second change is actually the one that I think we should do both, but it sounds like the one that's more important to you is the second change that would describe the role of the select board in that 40 days. Is that right? Or have I misunderstood?
Yeah, I think the select board needs to instigate again in consultation with the town, because it is the town's, like the administrators have to figure out what to do.
Okay. And I think that's what, Hannah, you were saying the same thing, or was I misinterpreting what you were saying?
My issue is with the phrase considering the rejected budget, because first of all, OTM did not reject the budget. The Australian ballot rejected the budget. And if you're just going to start back at the same point with the budget that's already been rejected, it just seems like there needs to be a...
Yeah. So if we take out, we say for the purpose of considering the town's general fund budget, and we put in a sentence that says something about the select board in this 40 days shall, put a budget together. And then the open town meeting is about considering the general fund budget.
The revised.
And they might not revise it, though.
That's true.
So I think if you leave it, like, for the purpose, they warn a meeting to consider the budget. And in that time frame, they do something.
Yes.
They may come back and say, guys, we can't do anything different. We're doing this again. So I don't know if we should put any kind of adjective.
I think it should be general, that the select board, during that period, however that should be phrased, considers alternatives for modifying the proposed budget, something like that. Would you be comfortable, so that we're not trying to wordsmith it on the fly, that we flag as a group, if we are united, I think it's a good idea that we add this. If a majority of us think it's a good idea that we add this, that we leave it to Kate and Bob in the wordsmithing that they're going to be doing around some other issues to actually create the language that would come back to us next time?
And then we can look at it.
I'm fine.
Okay, so we're gonna fix this by adding that. Okay,
But we should take out the rejected budget
Yeah,
part
we're-
because it's
Yes.
not.
no, we're gonna say for the purpose of considering, something like saying for the purpose of considering the town's general fund budget. Because that's what the open town meeting is about, considering
Yes.
the town's general fund budget.
Yes.
So we'll take out rejected budget and keep it more neutrally positive.
And then between that and B, you'll add language about what the select board's going to do in that interim period.
Yes. Okay, so then we have C, and the first option in C is that,
Wait, I'm sorry, why are we skipping over B?
because nobody flagged anything, do we have something, or maybe I might
Well,
have forgot what we're
you
doing.
asked me not to bring up stylistic things before.
No, I'm sorry, I'm confused, we've been doing this for a long time, and I've been looking at this. Yes, so we can talk about B. I didn't think we were talking about B, but we can talk about it.
I
So,
just,
yeah.
the phrase warn a special vote by Australian ballot, because it's defined in Article 1,
Yeah.
the town meeting is both parts,
Oh, yeah, because on this.
and a special
right.
town meeting can be either or. It shouldn't be a special vote, it should be a special town meeting for a vote by Australian ballot.
Well, this is the part that I struggled with a couple of times. I definitely think, but you agree that it should say special, it needs to be special. You know what I mean? Because it is a special town meeting. If you think we need to say warn a special town meeting, vote by Australian ballot, is that what you're saying?
A special town meeting,
Because it is special, it's not the annual one, because this is the rejection
for the
phase.
purpose of voting upon the, whatever by Australian ballot, I think it should mirror the language of the first part so that it's clear and it's just that special vote is not the right
Okay.
phrase.
But
How
so
that
if
gets
she
changed, I
works
don't
with
care.
Bob on creating more parallel language there,
So-
you don't object to there being step A, open town meeting, step B, Australian ballot, is that correct?
Right,
You're looking for more parallel language.
You told me before not to bring up stylistic changes and that we would be going back through it, so now I am.
Can you tell, I'm actually confused. What am I paralleling it to? What's in A?
Yes.
Right, so it would say the select board shall warn a special town meeting, to be held whenever, to be held thereafter, for the purpose of voting by Australian ballot on the total budget adopted at the special open town meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, I'm just saying this on the fly, but it needs to,
If we look at the definitions in Article 1,
yeah, it says it
We
can
have-
be either or.
Right,
special town meeting shall mean any special.
right. I just want to make it clear that we're talking Australian ballot,
Yes.
not getting people confused.
Which we can do and accommodate the
Yes.
parallel
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
I think point made, and if you address that when you're working on the words with Bob, we should land in the right place.
It should be parallel.
I can't think clearly anymore. Okay, all right. All right, so we'll fix that. Fix. And then C, it's deciding, is there an end point, a definite end point, which is after 2 rejections, or do we let the process continue until we have a budget? I mean, I would love the process to end, but I'm also very happy just to let it continue because I have faith that it's not going to go 10 times.
I don't see why, again, this goes back to the last thing we just voted on. I don't see why open town meeting gets the final say if everyone gets to vote both ways. If you want to have it be both ways, it's both ways. It's not.
That's why I'm totally fine with it just going if it has to go 400 times, because I have faith that it won't.
Yeah, I feel like that's public sentiment as I've been hearing it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's just let it go.
let's go with
Yeah.
the second C.
Okay, so does somebody want to make an official motion to go with the second C? Maya, do you want to make a motion to go with the second C?
I make a motion that we adopt the language If the voters continue to reject the budget, the process outlined in this section shall continue until a budget is approved.
Okay, so Maya moves that we go with the language, if the voters continue to reject the budget, the process outlined in this section shall continue until the budget is approved.
And I don't think we need the
Yeah.
language that's in
Yeah.
the parentheses.
Yes, and that's just another Bob question to make sure, do we need something like that so that people understand? It's just there as a placeholder.
Okay,
It's not
because
like-
we say budget,
Yeah,
reject the budget specifically, so.
yeah. Okay, so any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor of Maya's motion to go with the second number, the second letter C?
Uh,
And all those opposed? And are you abstaining?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then the second, the D, does anyone have any issues with that?
So one thing I want to raise is that borrowing money isn't free. And so allowing them to borrow up to the total budget means you're going to go over budget if you pass a flat budget. And so that's my only consideration to, I think that this is necessary. But I don't know that 100% is
Right, we could put,
I'd
maybe
be perfectly happy to cap it lower. We originally were talking about a much lower cap, and then I don't remember exactly with whom and when, but somewhere in the process encountered the concern of multiple different rejections could get us deep enough into the fiscal year that if there's a low cap, that we're still running out of money even though we tried to have a safeguard.
And I vaguely recall, was it, certainly it's not statute because that's what we've heard, but like a
That's right.
60%, like you could borrow 60% of the previous year's budget to float you for the first quarter?
I'm not sure about the borrowing piece. I believe that the
Just operating.
statute regarding the schools says they can actually issue taxes. They can levy
It's
taxes
89%
up to, yeah, it was 80 something
yeah,
percent.
school is 89%.
I'm not sure about the borrowing.
Yeah.
And so operate at a lower percentage is the language, and it's not borrow, it's operate at? Or is
It's
it?
issue tax bills up to that amount. So basically, everybody gets a discounted bill for next year compared to the bill you paid this year.
And I would.
But then you have to reissue. Once you've adopted a budget, you have to reissue the tax bills.
And I would certainly also say I would not be comfortable with up to the previous year's budget. I would also put it at a lower one. And
Sure.
if there is language for the school board, then it seems easy enough to, who has a larger budget,
Right.
that it is.
So that would be 89%, I think, or 87 was in my mind, but you had
Something, yeah.
89 in your mind.
I
But
might be
if we
making that
just
up.
grabbed the number, whatever it is from statute, whatever it is for the schools for taxation, and apply it to this for borrowing, you'd be comfortable with that? I could support that.
Hannah, does that sound good to you? School number?
Great.
We'll confirm what that is. Okay. Okay, school number. Okay, so we'll get that number. Okay. So what we'll do is take all of this and fix it and come back with a document that just has alternative one, with the finance info. It's all be one document. It's not gonna be this two document thing. And then we'll know where we go from here. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
When you say all one document, like
Well, right now- well, right-
update, go ahead.
Yeah, well, right now, we have half of finance here and half of finance separate.
But you're not suggesting a full charter draft when you're saying the consideration.
Well, that's what we need to talk about, because, right, that's what I want to talk to, we need to talk about right now, like, what do we want? And what can we do? And like, how do we do it?
Well, so we've got a few more substantive things, I think,
Yeah.
based on the agenda
Yeah.
that we need to decide. But when we've made those decisions, it does seem like
we need to see it in its.
Seeing it in its entirety would be helpful. I don't know if we can get there or not
What do
in
you
the
think,
time
Hannah? 'Cause it's-
frame that we have.
I mean, since there's not approved language yet, I would say you shouldn't put it into your complete draft if you're gonna end up changing it.
But we're gonna have very limited time between the 23rd and the 28th.
Right, but it's really easy to drop the completed language in than it is to go in and
Okay.
edit it in the.
Okay. So if next, because now we're meeting on is it next
The
Thursday?
23rd. Yeah, next
Thursday, so
Thursday.
we have 2 extra days.
Week from Thursday.
If we come back with this, but the finance piece altogether is what I
Right.
was saying.
Yep.
Not having this mishmash.
Can I suggest something just slightly different than that? Yes, absolutely, to consolidating these two pieces we've been working with so far tonight. But then when we're done with these other things,
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful. We won't do a whole nother document for the reasons that have been flagged. I think that's right and proper. But if there was one document, one backup document for us for next time that had all the different pending changes. So basically we can look at it and we can say, we know what we had on September 1st.
Yep.
This is one document that would be all the things that we're going to do differently than September 1st. We focus on that document next time, tweak whatever needs tweaking, make our final decisions. And then that one document with whatever changes we make that night
Yeah.
is the thing that drops in
Yes.
to become the July 28th.
Right.
Does that work?
Yeah.
I think it'd be helpful if it was all in one continuous flow for
Yeah,
the different
I agree with
sections
you.
that are changing.
Yeah.
So we look for July 28th as the final approval of the
Yes,
complete.
we have,
That's right.
we have this thing that we, the nice crossy outy and the nice clean thing
Yeah, we
that we're
have it.
approving.
Yeah,
And then the date just, yeah. Okay, so,
change the date.
yeah. Okay, so let's get running through these other things. Some of these are, I think, easier than the others, but these are the things that we were talking about at the last meeting. God, it's like an inferno in here. So the first thing was in Article 6, Section 7, which will not be 6 or 7 anymore because we're adding a new one, so it'll be probably 8, is changing the word sinking to reserve. So it would just be duly approved reserve funds are exempt from this provision. And we came to the use reserve was because Bob told us reserve is the word to use.
Yep.
So if I made a motion right now that we change
Sinking to
reserve, so it's going to read duly approved reserve funds are exempt from this provision. Does anybody have any comments or questions before we vote on that? Okay, all those in favor of changing it to read duly approved reserve funds are exempt from this provision, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? 6-0. Okay, this is the one that's a little bit more complicated. And this is article for section 3A appointments, and we've gone back and forth on this, that there is for cause language in our current draft. It's on page 4 of the clean draft of the September 1st. It says the select board shall appoint a town manager and may remove same for cause. We talked about this at the last meeting. We've talked about it with Bob twice. Subsequently, while I was going through all the charters, Bob is insistent, and he's our town attorney, we need to respect that and listen to that we have to leave that for cause language in. There are other charters in the state that do not use that for cause language. And again, this is just Peter and I, it's 2 of us, it's not everybody, 6 of us have looked this over. We've seen what they've done in these other towns, and we've proposed language that they actually use in Richmond. And that says, and it's in the backup material, the select board shall appoint a town manager. The town manager shall at all times be an at-will employee and shall serve at the pleasure of the select board, except as may otherwise be provided in the employment agreement required in our Article 5, Section 2 of our charter. That would be new.
And in Richmond, they don't have a requirement for an agreement, so they say unless otherwise provided in an employment agreement. But we think it's important to have it not be that vague on the employment agreement question, since we've already got a section we've approved that requires an employment agreement between the town and the manager. And so that's why we slightly changed the intent and impact of the words are intended to be the same for us as in the Richmond example, but where we reference the employment agreement that's required, because that will speak to this matter in whatever manner every town manager and the respective select board have chosen to speak to
And
it.
to clarify, while you have talked with Bob about the for cause, have you shown him this language as well?
Not yet.
Okay.
And that's why, and I know Hannah was not here on the day that we talked about this. So it would be helpful if you would weigh in on your thoughts. And I know Bob is very strong that state statute requires that we have for cause in there, but there are, 10 or at least seven town charters that do not have for cause in it. And I haven't had a specific conversation with Bob about this yet, because I wanted to have a conversation with us before I spent time talking to him.
My understanding of the for cause being the default under state statute is that it protects the town manager from the political whims of the select board. And I think that that's really important. And I think that confusing the terms of an employment contract with whether or not a job is for cause is, they're two separate things. You can lay out, basically ways that you would pay severance if you wanted to avoid the need to prove for cause. It's basically a compromise on a contract, and that's different than saying someone's an at-will employee versus a for-cause employee. And I don't think that the town manager should be subject to the whims of the select board and be able to be fired at will just because there's a board that doesn't get along with a particular town manager. I think that there should be that requirement. And if there is a severance clause or some sort of other bargain in the contract, that's separate. That's this is a position that should not be subject to the whims of the select board.
And I think, to be honest with you, you can go too, Peter. I think, to be honest with you, that's the general point of disagreement. Of this, should this person? I actually disagree with that, and maybe it's because I was an at-will employee for the state of Vermont. Just because I work for the governor, there was a new one, I could be gone in a second. So I just see it differently. And I think it's more, and I'll let Peter talk, but I think that's where our general difference is, that we just see this position differently.
I see it differently too. Forgive me, I'm probably going to say things that I've said before and you've heard from me before, but I think it's important context in this moment when I say the rest of what I'm going to say, that for 22 years, I was a town manager, and for 12 years before that, I was an assistant town manager working within this system in its various incarnations in 4 different places. And I think it's absolutely an important principle of the council manager form of government, where the manager is in a unique role at the pinch of the hourglass, accountable to the select board, who's accountable to the people, and responsible for supervising the department heads who are responsible for the operations of the town. The manager's in this incredibly powerful position, and a position that is explicitly, unavoidably, both political and administrative. Everybody else on staff ought to be administrative, and everybody else up above is all concerned primarily with the politics, but the manager is the one who's responsible for what goes on below and the advisor in all of the political decisions made by the board. And it's not only been my experience, it has been my experience that, and it has been my experience personally in my career, and it is also standard in relationships between managers and communities across the country, that managers have employment agreements, as we're requiring, and that those employment agreements talk about under what circumstances it's appropriate for the governing body to make the decision that they need to make a change. And usually, not always, that language then within those sections about termination and severance pay, there can be some substantial differences between agreements when you get to the details. But the content of that section of the agreement, as a matter of accepted proper practice, speaks to circumstances that are for cause and circumstances that are not for cause, where it's simply the judgment of the board that a change is necessary. And the protection for the town manager and their family in the circumstances where a more abrupt decision might be made, perhaps even for overtly political reasons, is in the severance that the parties also have agreed to, that under the circumstances where there is not cause shown, that there would be severance provided. And that's all in very boilerplate language available, for every future manager and every future select board to reference in the creation of the agreements. And I believe it's actually important for the good governance of the community that select boards who believe that a change is necessary, that they be able to make the change that's necessary and then be accountable for it. We've set up already in our work the mechanism where everybody's interests can be addressed, where the town manager's interests can be protected with severance language and, frankly, with also process language regarding termination. And here, all Kate and I are suggesting and feeling strongly about, and now have seen evidence that elsewhere in Vermont, they've landed in this place that we were thinking was important for us to land. We've heard from some members of the public that they think it's important for us to land in the place that gives this flexibility to the select board. Now, we had come back to you at our last meeting and said, well, we tried, we thought it was important, but it looks like, based on Bob's advice, for cause is absolutely required. That graded against us in the general principle that we've talked about so many times here, that you only put into a charter the things where you're differing from state statute. So it felt weird to be required to put something in because it's in the state statute. We totally acknowledge that it is the default language in the state statute. We think it should be different in our charter for all the reasons we've talked about before, and I've just restated some of them and tried to make the case for why this is actually not just appropriate, but important. And we believe it can be done in a manner by referencing, because we're already requiring an agreement, by referencing that requirement in this language, we think we actually provide that protection through a different means, for sure, than for cause language, but provide that protection to every future manager.
I know I'm jumping ahead, but this proposed edit in number 3 undoes that protection. It doesn't require severance.
So we can change number 3. I would suggest if number 3 needs to be changed, that's fine. I think the language proposed in number 2 is important for our charter. And I'm saying that as a person who actually would have been protected. But I signed an agreement with the town of Brattleboro where I gave away that right because I think it's so important. I thought any future select board, there was a select board that hired me in 2014. And if anybody thought before I was ready to be done that I ought to get done for the betterment of the town, I wanted them to be able to do that. And all I wanted was protection for my family. And we put that in the agreement because that's so normal in this day and age for that to be how this question gets addressed.
Which 3 are you talking about?
I think this one right here, I think.
In the July 9th memo. I'm fine, Hannah. If there's an inconsistency there that you think needs to be addressed, I'm fine with changing the wording in 3.
I mean, I'm going to vote against number 2, and so we can talk about 3 when we get there, but I'm just saying that language is in opposition to the argument you're making right now, so I just want to point that out.
Good. That's right.
Okay.
This is like we've opened the can of worms by adding more language to the town manager section, by saying things that weren't there before, the written agreement and that sort of thing. So, and now the consequences of that means there's another statement that might need to be made, whether or not it gets voted on. the nuances of like the HR protocol is like really getting muddled right now in my head that I don't, if I'm being honest, I cannot make the best decision on this right now
Yep, okay.
because the language hasn't been vetted as well of like making sure, and so fine, it exists like in another charter, so like it would theoretically pass legislature, but and I don't want to undo what has the September draft language to say that we do expect, going forward that there will be agreement. I do want that clarified. And the nuances of the for cause and at will right now is so,
Yeah.
it is warm, it is late, and it is so important.
Yeah. Yep. I hear you. And I think, like for me, I don't want to feel like we have to put it in because it has to be in the charter when it doesn't. I think this is a difference of opinion on how the town manager should be treated as an employee, because we don't have to put it in the charter. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's where I think our difference is on this thing. And you're right. It's like, how do we figure out where we are on this? Because we have very different opinions.
Yep.
But I don't want to be told that you have to have that in the charter, because we don't. You know what I mean? I want to make the decision based on, you know what I mean, on not that we're forced to keep it in, but we're seeing this, and I actually see it as it's this in our town. It works the select board, the town manager, the department heads. If you look at our org chart, it's not the town manager, the select board, and then, you know what I mean? Like, it's very clear who does the hiring and who does the firing where the town manager is concerned. That's my whole reason for seeing it the way I'm seeing it. But I just want to get away from, at least in my mind, I finally became, wait a second, this doesn't have to be in the charter. That's where we were at the last meeting, like, no way, no how it has to be in the charter, and it doesn't.
So, may I?
Yeah.
So actually, if this language, so what statute does in Vermont, what statute does in Vermont, without commenting, offering an opinion about it, tilts to the benefit of a town manager, and only levels back up if the town manager in the negotiation of the agreement with the community is willing to give up something statute provides to the manager, right? The language that is before us tonight tilts it the other way, in large part because, in entire part because Kate from her public sector experience and I from my town manager experience.
I
think
have
it's
also been an
the right
at-will
thing to do.
employee.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that other people haven't been
Yeah,
at will.
we're
What I'm
just-
suggesting is Kate has very directly applicable experience on the select board, and I have very directly experience as a town manager. And together, we both believe that this relationship ought to be calibrated in the manner that we're recommending. There is another way in which we could collectively address that. If tilting, so the statute tilts towards the manager, our language tilts towards the select board and community. If that feels like going too far to us as a commission, we could put this right back to where we started before Bob said, no, put for cause in the charter. You got to have for cause in the charter. We could take for cause out of the charter because we know there's precedent for that in Vermont. And we could leave the playing field level to be worked out every time just between select boards and town managers, which is where we were 2 meetings ago when what we were proposing was language that said something like this. Select board shall appoint a town manager and may remove same in accordance with the provisions of the agreement that is required by section XYZ. And I would continue to be perfectly happy with that language. I would be concerned if we don't address this question either with that language or with this language. I think that it's an important thing for the protection of our community. I was a town manager. I loved being a town manager. And there's, I'm not suggesting that there's any reason why we shouldn't value and respect town managers and the incredibly important role they play in our community. And town managers are an individual person performing a job, but we as a community live on, where we live before that manager arrives and we live on after that manager leaves. And if the scale's going to tilt at all, I believe it should tilt to the community's benefit rather than the manager's benefit. And then the protection for the manager is in the agreement. And I completely respect that we might not all land there together, but if we don't, then I would ask, please, that we land in the place that is the level playing field of not stating for cause in our charter, but stating that a manager may be removed in accordance with the agreement that has been required by a different section of the charter.
I feel a little more comfortable with that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I feel more comfortable with this than.
So it's the language that's we've already
No.
put in the
No,
charter.
we
No,
have
it's
not
actually
put
not.
it in. We stopped because Bob told us we couldn't.
Right.
So it would be.
We had planned to do it, and then we pulled it out on Bob's advice.
Right, we have not.
That's why we're revisiting
Go to
it.
page 4, right here. So we did not put the new
that-
language in. So that's the question.
Because elsewhere,
Well, that comes next, the if any. That's what we're talking about next, on page 6.
yeah, we have the employment agreement.
Yes. I'm perfectly, if we don't want to do what's proposed here, doing it, making it neutral and pivoting to the employment agreement is totally fine with me.
Slate, I don't want to be this person, but that's redundant. To say they'll abide by the terms of the contract and we say you have to have a contract, it's unnecessary to say it twice.
Do you have alternative language other than going back to the may remove same for cause?
I think that having may remove same for cause and then allowing them to contract around that and giving the town manager the option to give up some of those rights is a better option than switching them to an at-will employee.
So I hear that,
That's why we're
and that tilts to the manager. And Kate and I prefer language that tilts to the town. And we're hearing from our colleagues that leveling the language is preferred. So my question is, do you have advice about leveled language other than just referring to the required agreement?
No, because I mean that the agreement is how you level it. That's the worker.
But you start with for cause, or you can start with at will. Either way, one of those tilts it.
I don't have anything better. I just think saying that they can remove them under the terms of the contract, like that's a given. That's a redundant statement.
So under the draft charter, section 3A, you would just say the select board shall appoint a town manager.
And then we have, on page 6, we have the employment agreement. That says there's an employment agreement that lays out the terms of employment. I mean,
I think it needs to be
Except-
explicitly stated in one form or another that the select board may remove the town manager.
right.
I think you have to leave that last
Unless we
sentence
go,
in too.
and may remove the same, period, without saying for cause. I mean, that's the only, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's not enough. The select board shall appoint a town manager and may
We have the select board shall, in section 3A,
Yeah.
we have the select board shall appoint a town manager and may remove the same for cause.
Right.
And then in Article 5, Section 1, we say the select board shall has the sole authority to appoint a town manager.
Right, so
So
we're-
we have that twice.
Right, so we're already redundant, so I don't mind being redundant again. Yeah, you're right.
For those of you who were seeking leveling, is it an acceptable alternative, despite its redundancy, to put back in the language that we were on two meetings ago about may remove same in accordance with the provisions of the agreement that's required by XYZ? Is that a place you can land and support?
So we're not saying for cause or at will. We're
Right.
just saying it's all spelled, they can remove
In
the town
accordance-
manager based on what's in the employment agreement
And the
that
employment
both
agreement will
parties
have
have
been,
hashed out.
that's right, both the select board and the manager by definition will have agreed upon the language that's in the
Yeah.
agreement that we would be
I feel
pointing
more
to.
comfortable with that.
I do feel more comfortable. I'm also thinking like not having more specific language because it can be more evergreen to changing environments.
Totally. Yeah.
And that the employment agreement, whether it is as redundant to say it every single time, but where I would land is the employment agreement.
Okay. That makes 4 of us, maybe 5. I'd suggest we go there. It's a place that we all thought was actually, maybe not all, it's a place where we as a commission thought was an appropriate place to land until Bob's recommendation to include the for-cause language led us to this longer, much more complicated conversation. Coming back and landing in that same place, especially with the leveling conversation we've had tonight, feels right to me. If there's 5 of us that can support that, I think that's what, when you meet with Bob, I think that's what you ought
I'm
to
for
take to him.
leveling.
Please.
All right, so if we can come up with some leveling thing, and we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just suggest we go back to the language that was in front of us 2 meetings ago that referred, said the select board shall appoint and may remove in accordance with the agreement, and then it had some finishing language that I don't recall, but
That's fine.
the agreement that may be required, that is required by blah, blah, blah.
And then
Okay.
we talk about the agreement.
Right.
The agreement goes into the
And then the
next thing.
agreement speaks to, the agreement paragraph speaks to the agreement.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll draft something up so everybody can look at it and we can hash it out again.
Yep.
Does that sound okay? Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I don't know about the if any now. How do we feel about, that's on page 6. Add the words if any in Article 5, Section 2 employment agreement.
We added that at the suggestion of a member of the public.
Public, yeah.
I want to say that.
We haven't really added it yet. We considered adding it.
That's true. It is in front of us because of a suggestion of the member of the public. And I would say, in contrast to what I was expressing about, my own perspective, my own experience with all of this, on the last item, I don't have any similar strong opinion about this. I'm happy to land wherever all of you think is the right place to land. If we say, if any, without characterizing it, if we don't say it, it's still going to be true that the agreement is going to speak to severance compensation one way or another.
Right.
The if any suggests that the manager and the community might agree not to have severance compensation or to have differential severance compensation depending on different circumstances of termination. And I think that could be useful and is also not essential, in my opinion, because the agreement is going to speak to all of these things in one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't think we need it.
I'm neutral.
I'm fine without it. I mean, I can go either way, so I won't.
Well, we have a severance compensation.
Right. But to me, it's
But-
it's
but
spoken
it's-
as if it's any. We don't know. We need to put the words if any.
No, because we don't know what they're going to negotiate.
Right.
Right?
I think a lot of we might be, and anyone reading it might tie it really close, the if any, to severance compensation, when if any would also apply to salary, benefits, rights,
Right.
and responsibilities.
Right.
If any. And so again, the redundant would be the written agreement. And so I think the focus has been because of an experience of severance compensation is where people are tying it strongly to. But again, it is up at the negotiation that salary, if any,
Right.
benefits, if any,
Right.
are all at stake. And that again is in the written agreement.
I agree. Let's strike it.
So
I don't think we need to have a vote if we're not adding it.
no. So we're all
Okay.
saying no to that.
Good.
Perfect. Okay, now the other one, and I was so excited because I rewatched. I have to thank BCTV because they actually put what time we talk about stuff, so I didn't have to watch like a bazillion-hour meeting to get to this part. So I watched it, and we did not make a decision on adding which shall not be regarded as indicative of intent, which was on page 8. And it really came down to, and I don't want to I can do a reenactment of the meeting, but I don't want to reenact the meeting. It really came down to, as I said, what did I say? It was our personal opinions about what the list was about. And it was who was thinking of the intent. And Hannah, your concern was that a vendor would see the list and think, well, they put this, in 5 years, they're going to do all this road construction, so I'm going to go out and buy, hot mix for the road. That somebody may see that list and think that means that we're going to do it in 5 years. And then Peter and I were like, well, no, because, we haven't approved that project yet. So it was really, the discussion was about what the list meant and and what it meant to whom. You know what I mean? What did it mean to a vendor who's looking at the list? Because we all kind of agreed that the taxpayer is not seeing this as, oh, we're doing this, because it actually hasn't been voted on yet. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where we were with this thing, is just, I think it should go, which shall not be regarded as indicative of intent, because it is indicative of intent, right. But it's not indicative of we're 100% going to do it in 5 years. We've done stuff in this town that we've had on, the grader was on the list for 20 years before we bought a new one.
Go ahead, keep going, I'm sorry.
Well, and there was something else.
It's something that says that it's not binding,
right.
And that's what I want.
Shall not, if the sentence before says, which shall not be binding on the select board, such list, which shall not be regarded as indicative of intent, should specify possible. So we've given ourselves, the out is there, it's not binding.
Right.
So the which shall not be regarded as indicative of intent is just not actual reality.
It's actually false.
Right.
The plan is brought forward as an indication of our intentions without it being a binding commitment.
Yeah.
And so it's just incorrect as it's currently written, and we're already protected, as Kate said, by the fact that this language explicitly says that it's not binding upon the select board. So it's just a list, but why do we have that list? Because it indicates our intentions. And we say in this language that it's not our intentions. That begs the question of why have a list? And it just feels improper.
Did you ask Bob about this one?
I did not.
I would suggest that maybe you ask Bob about this one and come back next meeting.
Sounds good.
I will do that. But I'm just going to say, as somebody who sat on the select board, it is indicative of intent. So I will talk to Bob about it, but it's always been indicative of intent.
Yeah.
So you would
Scratch it out.
You would want it to read, the select board shall submit at the open meeting of the annual town meeting a list of possible capital expenditures for the next 5 years for the guidance and information of the voters, which shall not be binding on the select board.
Yes.
So because we say that, I don't think we need to say which shall not be regarded as indicative of intent.
Right.
I think that becomes
And it's not true. Because
That's the troubling thing to me, is I wouldn't necessarily be concerned about redundancy. We've addressed that, and sometimes we choose to be redundant.
But it's not.
To me, it's not factually
true.
accurate.
Yeah, it's not
we
true.
shouldn't put it in because of
We ask. I mean, the finance committee always asks for a list.
It's for planning purposes.
Correct.
I wonder if it's just the hang up over the word intent. Because, shall not be regarded as indicative of possible activity.
It is
But it
indicative
is.
of possible
Well,
activity.
Because the thing is, if you look at this, again, I'll go back to the grader. There was this grader that was on the list for 20 years. We kept saying, okay, we're going to do it next year. We couldn't. So we always knew we wanted to buy this second grader, and it took us 20 years to buy the second grader. But the intent was always to buy a second grader when we had the money to do it. So things just aren't on the list for like, woo, you know, for the heck of it. It's so you can financially plan.
This is what
as
we
well.
intend to do, but for various reasons, either by deciding in the end it's not necessary, or by deciding we want to but we can't afford it, or whatever other reasons, we might not go forward and implement it,
Yeah.
which is why it's not binding. These are possible things, and it's not binding. But we've already said they're possible things and not binding. And it just feels wrong to state it's not indicative of intent when the only reason things are on the list is because, in fact,
It is.
we intend to do it.
Then, yeah, I'm making sure with Bob that
Yeah.
it isn't
Yeah.
contradictory.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll do that. Okay. Okay. So, that, there's just one other issue.
Justices of the peace.
I know, and I had a conversation yesterday with Hillary about this. There's a complicating factor to it that might mean we just leave it like it is. And I don't know, Hannah, if she talked to you about this. Right, it's write-in candidates, section 5, number 2. As I wrote from Hannah's, I just put Hannah's email in from Hillary into our backup. Justices of the peace are not town officials. So right now, it's, you know, we've said anybody who's a town, running for a town office needs to say they want to be a write-in candidate. But since justices of the peace are not town candidates, they're not included in this. I thought it was going to be just simple going, oh, we put justices of the peace. But when I talked to Hillary yesterday, the complicating factor is the youth vote, because the youth voters cannot vote for the justices of the peace, which means if we're saying that they still have to, those write-in candidates aren't accounted for, Hillary's like, she's going to have to put the justices of the peace on a separate ballot. Mm-hmm. You know, so there may have to be a separate ballot. And I said to her, I said, if it's between having a separate ballot or getting justices of the peace to not, you don't have to count in the write-ins, she doesn't want to have a separate ballot. So we'd have to write this language some way, Hannah, that would make it clear that youth voters cannot vote for justices of the peace. But does that complicate our charter too much? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just want to ask an additional question. I don't have an opinion about where we land on this. I want to get good advice and make a good decision. Could it possibly be a solution to this to actually declare that justices of the peace in Brattleboro are town officials?
No, it's a constitutionally created
Okay.
office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I said to Hillary, if this becomes really complicated, which way do you want us to fall? And she'd rather fall on we'll just count the write-ins, as opposed to they're going to have to do a separate thing for youth voters.
Okay.
And, you know, because youth voters, we don't want youth voters to think they can vote for justices of the peace.
Right.
And that's a November ballot. That's what's interesting. The justices of the peace are on the
When there is no
November
town
election.
When there is no town election, so the 16, 17-year-olds can't vote in November.
Right, but she's saying what she doesn't want us to do is make justices of the peace a town office.
Right.
This is a complicating thing. We can't include, we have to write this in a way that doesn't make people think the justice of the peace, we have to not do what you just said.
Yeah.
Not make it a town office.
Right, I get that.
So I don't know what I wasn't thinking about what the draft thing is. She just wants it, that's just her complicating factor. And maybe it's not a complicating factor in just adding justices of the peace, but it's making it so it's clear that youth voters
This is
can't
already a deviation from the normal practice.
Yes.
Which is why Hillary wants this included, because the way the Secretary of State has interpreted Brattleboro's charter, this specific language, is that it applies to town officers. So I don't think we would be creating any issue by saying an individual tends to be a write-in candidate for a town office or justice of the peace shall declare their intent and has to be otherwise eligible to serve.
Yes.
But that's not adding who can vote for them. It's just saying, if you're going to be a write-in, you got to declare your intent, and then she only has to count those votes.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I just have a question of why, if we're going to go outside of town offices to any other offices that a 16 and 17-year-old can't vote for, why we would only be concerned with justices of the peace and not with other offices.
Well, can I, maybe Hannah has more intel on this. When I was talking to Hillary yesterday and she brought this up, the state of Vermont has, like, either they've just passed legislation or doing something about write-in candidates, and it's this giant flow chart. So it's a little bit scary. Like, Hillary was just like, oh my God, can you believe, like, it's about who they have to count the ballots for and write-ins. And it's like this gigantic, like, green and yellow and pink flow chart.
Yep.
I don't know why Hillary has not said it for federal candidates. And again, she's not like, this is not this most super important thing. And I don't know why she thought of it when she brought it up to you. Like, I don't know what was going on in her head to think, oh, I have to, I'm going to talk to Hannah about this. You know what I mean? I don't know what was going on.
I think I'd have to look at the actual charter, but I think this was also part of a section that had to do with RTM candidates. And because those are also not town officers.
Yeah.
So it was both.
Yeah.
And she had just emailed me to ask if I don't know, it was like I think it was a day of the last meeting. Like she'd asked she just specifically asked that if I could bring this to the charter. I don't remember the context in which it came up, but that's what she asked for. But if it sounds like it's gotten more complicated in the intervening month and she doesn't want us to do it anymore, that's fine.
She was just like, I gave her okay, wait a second. If this is going to get super complicated, would you rather we not do it? And she was like, yes, don't make it any more complicated. The state is doing something. And I wouldn't, on a federal level, I mean,
we can't affect federal law.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to affect federal,
Yeah.
but there are other constitutional officers.
Right.
Too, besides just, it feels awkward to me to name Justice of the Peace
Right.
and not other constitutional officers
Right.
within
Right.
Vermont or Windham County. And so, in the absence of more compelling information, my vote would be, let's just leave it alone. If she says, yeah, you can leave it alone.
Yeah.
But maybe there is compelling information why we got to do it, but then the calibration of it matters in terms of why just Justices of the Peace.
Right.
I think it's another municipal level office that's getting voted on.
Yeah. Yeah. But it wasn't a do or die thing when I was talking to her about it yesterday.
If there's not something to calibrate because it is only a then listing it, I think, just makes it clear. And especially when there might be complications, and then it does keep the ballot clean for her.
Well, it's more the counting end of it. Like, she still, she still could have 10 write-ins, but they're only going to count it if Joy comes in and says, I want to be a write-in.
Right.
So, I'm kind of, I don't know. She was concerned for some reason that it was going to affect the youth vote, which she didn't want to do.
I mean, I don't think adding justice to the peace to this section changes anything but that. But she said, can you bring this to the Charter Commission? I said, yes. And I just passed it along.
Yeah.
I don't have any opinion on it.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't anymore either, then I don't think we need to address it.
And if you do want to pursue it any further, could you just put it on your list of things to talk about with Bob?
Yeah.
So we at least get that guidance when this comes
Bob
back.
was on the entire email chain when she asked me to put this forth, so he's aware of it. And I think if he had some concern, he would have raised it. But
Got it.
Okay. So, okay, so that was the last thing of anything new that we wanted to add or take out or whatever. So, the next thing is next Thursday's meeting, we'll have all of this stuff written up in a way that we can all read it, and hopefully we have to leave next week with it. So it can be on the 28th, we can just come in and say yes. Does that make sense to everybody?
On the 28th, we'll have a clean draft.
The clean and the red line,
Yeah.
same as September 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Does that work
Does
for
that-
you, Han?
all right.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Maya's made a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? No.
I have to go.
Thanks for the 2 remaining people in the room with us. We appreciate you. Hannah, don't go yet. I want to talk to you. Thanks for the 2 remaining people in the room. We really appreciate your support. Thank you.